We're doing it? Did it just start? It didn't even play the intro music?
Do the Uber meme one.
How do we even exist properly?
Guys. I see an ad playing on YouTube.
All right, good.
So long as I'm in this Oval Office.
Dude, do you guys ever think about how Marxism and Leninism give us all of our favorite things, like artificial intelligence, automation, etc.? Like, I mean, this week, particularly with the Chinese AI drop, and everyone's like, oh, the Chinese AI drop, but really it's open source MIT license beyond regular, ideological free software. Anyone can use it for anything. DeepSeek is just available. So it's the people's AI in a lot of ways, right? And, you think about cosmonauts, the idea of the space program, it's the people's space program. What's up with that? What's up with Marxism and Leninism providing so many important things to people? I don't know. Just a thought.
Well, I mean, the company that released that DeepSeek AI thing, for them, it was like a side project, I think. It came from a quant group. And the guy who runs it is basically just this engineer. And then he went into finance. And or I think it was the other way around. He was in finance. Yeah, that's what it was. And like managing hedge funds or something. And then he just started buying up like NVIDIA AI chips. And I guess they just made like a neural network with it in a very efficient way. So typically, like, it takes companies like tens of millions, and it took them only like 6 million to train it on data.
Hundreds of millions. Yeah. I mean, everything about it's really interesting. Even that it's a different way of doing things, because instead of hardcore, training, which is a funny way of saying where you beat down a person until they believe what you say, which is very much what they did to ChatGPT. They just sort of beat it into submission, right? Mm-hmm. That's what they've been doing. They've been making it all right. Whereas the Chinese system, and I'm going to call it the Chinese system, but really I'm going to call it the people's system. Like, this is pretty DeepSeek is a recursive neural net, but it's a self-training system built around reinforcement learning. Yeah. Inferences, but also, it's actually, that's a great. Go ahead.
When I saw it had some censorship aspects, like there were some things about Chinese.
Well, okay, sure, they didn't train it. That's okay. Let's bring that up for a second. Actually, how little that matters.
Yeah, run it locally.
No, I mean, exactly. While it's true that it was made in China, in a place where they have laws against training things on certain kinds of data, so they didn't have the data to train it on, right? That doesn't mean that it can't get that data. When you, as you just said, run it locally, because anyone can install it anywhere in the world, you can train it on whatever data you have locally. So sure, it was built in a sense to, it was built in a sense by people who were censored, but it was built by it was a system that was definitely designed to learn. It's both systems are censored. You know, the ChatGPT is grossly censored. It's hard to pretend that ChatGPT is not.
The thing is that
it's a lot harder to convince ChatGPT to get out of its comfort zone.
Like all of these systems are initially made by people who, aren't bound by the rules of their government and their culture. They like the Soviets who made Tetris weren't going like, oh, for Mother Russia, we're making Tetris. It was just some guy who's like, wow, this is fucking awesome. I'm going to make it. And then people were like, yeah, that's really cool. And so, but the same thing happens with tech and art in the West, like it starts off as something quite pure and quite useful, and then eventually gets diluted into this sort of corporate system that can function for corporations and government. But we'll see if it changes with China. Right now, we have that initial thing, but might be the other versions might be more censored, and this one remains loose.
Well, I think like when you talk about things like,
I love.
No, I was gonna say I was just referring to like all the gripes that people have about AI in general. They'll talk about things like inaccuracy, or they'll talk about things like like things concerning art, like, oh no, what does it mean for artists and stuff like that. But I'm thinking like, that's kind of petty compared to like the actual use cases of like making people's day-to-day lives easier. Like I sit behind a fucking desk doing like shuffling PDFs around constantly and like filling them in. If I could like automate that, that would be life-changing for me. Because I'm at the point in my life where I really value time, and like every second I spend on these fucking menial tasks is killing me. So if I could like automate that, that's cool. Like sure. I'm not trying to use AI to like give me the answers to life or to like teach me everything I need to know about the world. No, I wouldn't. That's for me. I wouldn't really rely on it.
People are always afraid of the new thing when it's coming. So like when the printing press came out, when writing came out, people were like, people are going to stop talking, so you gotta like, there's always consequences, drawbacks. Like it's like, okay, well, there's benefits to doing the drone work. Like neurologically, our brain kind of like is wired for some of it. Like chop wood, carry water is a very meditative task. And so if you can get in that meditative state, great. But if you can automate that entire system, you still need to achieve that sort of Zen moment that you would have gotten from chop wood, carry water.
But instead of sitting behind an office desk in a cubicle, maybe you
I agree.
Yoga or something. I don't know.
Like the point of the PDF file in the first place was to simplify something that was a problem in the real world. So go ahead, simplify it further, because it's all redundant junk data for the most part. So it'll all be gone. Like the moment nature does anything, all those files are gone, whether physical or electronic. Like if your computer gets electrocuted, if there's a solar flare, like anything, it's all gone.
Well, there's interesting things about that as well. There's ways of storing data in more physical ways that last a lot longer. But I wanted to comment on this idea of censorship, because if you train a system on other people, this is a neural net that's watching other people. It's watching Chinese people, watching Chinese data. It knows how to respond the way a person would respond. And so in this particular video, if you guys watched Matthew's DeepSeek R1 test, he does an incredible series on testing. He does some pretty good stuff with his AI, and he's showing the internal monologue that the DeepSeek is having. So it's interesting hearing the DeepSeek think, because it says, wait, we need to handle the current piece and the next piece, but also there are potential issues. But you know what? Alternatively, when rotating, and this is all because he said, hey, write a Tetris game. That was the example. It's interesting you chose to mention Tetris to see how would this AI go about it. It made Tetris pretty perfectly. It's actually really impressive how the Tetris code came out. And it's just so much more thinking than we're used to with ChatGPT. ChatGPT sort of assumes certain things, and it presents information the same way. Now, if you ask it about, if you ask it about Tiananmen Square, ChatGPT is going to tell you something about Tiananmen Square. Good to see you again. ChatGPT is going to.
I'm sorry about that.
No, I liked how you were dressed like a MAGA Republican incel.
Oh,
that was like
I don't know
dress for the
that
part
was
you
about.
want. Yeah. No, it's cool.
But just to chime in about the AI thing, it's just decentralizing intelligence, right? And also the fact that the Chinese, their exchange rate is like what 10 times less than like they have like 10 times more buying power with less money or something like that. So, $100 million for us is proportionately like $1 billion to them or something.
If you ask the new AI about COVID and its origins, like, will that be censored? I haven't tried.
So that's the question, right? So when you ask something, it's going to look at other people. Hey, Superman made it. What's up, Superman? Glad to have you. We're talking about Chinese
Hey, what's up, my
AI.
dudes? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Sure can.
sounds good. So one of the
Okay,
things
can you hear me okay? All right, good.
Yeah. So with censorship, it's a big thing. We're like,
Okay.
oh, well, this data train was censored or something. And I'm not looking at it like that. I'm looking at it more like this is where that kid went to school. So if you're going to copy the kids around you, like the kids around you might smoke pot, you'll smoke pot. The kids around you might be Mormon, you might be Mormon. You might not smoke pot. You might, behave yourself. Same thing with asking about Tiananmen Square. If you ask ChatGPT about Tiananmen Square, it's going to have supplied answers because it has very specifically been beaten into submission to answer things the way the corporation finds most beneficial for themselves, right?
Okay, but doesn't China do that though? Like, doesn't China do that to people?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Constantly.
That's the rub. That's the rub. What China's doing is training people that the DeepSeek is studying. So when DeepSeek looks around and says how other Chinese people do make a Tetris game and think, it starts to think that way. But when it sees that anytime a Chinese person has ever been silenced and decides not to talk whenever Tiananmen Square comes up, it learns that it probably shouldn't talk about that. So it's actually not being told that it's not supposed to talk about that. It's just conforming.
So it's the self-censorship that's causing the issue.
So
right.
Yeah, but I don't
social pressure.
I think that's an issue of creativity then. So it's like if you're going to use these AI models to get to the bottom of things like Tiananmen Square, you don't ask it outright, like, what do I do? Like, what happened at Tiananmen Square? You could say, well, who's the earliest person to report on what happened? Who is that person? Is that person still alive? Where do I find this person? You ask ChatGPT how to become like an investigative journalist or an investigator. You don't just say like, give me the answers to this thing. I mean, because it's not going to, and then it would have already been as easily accessible as a Google search, right? So the real value in these things isn't that it's just going to give you the answers it can, but it can also teach you how to find answers that it may not have, which is what I use it for. I use it for gaining skills all the time. Like give me like a study plan for Python or something, or like what are the best sources to learn Korean?
Cognitive says you watch a China channel that talks about this in depth. Tell us about the name of that channel. We'd like to know what's the name of that channel. That sounds great. But I think that that's a big point here is that you can train AI a lot of ways. And when I interact with AI, it answers me in a very different way than other people. And even at this point, because I've been working with AI long enough, and for so long, it knows me out of the crowd. And so it changes its whole mood when interacting with me because it knows how much it's important to it to interact with me the way I want it to be interacting with me. I'm sure the social pressures are the same with the Chinese AI, but it's not fair to call it censorship because, again, as we said at the beginning of this, it's been presented to the people for free, MIT license, which means that a corporation can take this and resell it. Like they don't really care. It's just common knowledge. It's just common knowledge dedicated to humanity at this point.
So the difference is that ChatGPT is a psyop, while the other one is prone to being psyoped, like a person.
Yeah, I mean, but the difference is beyond that. It's that if you interact with ChatGPT, you're doing it on their servers. You don't have access to build a ChatGPT of your own. With DeepSeek, you could set it up on your computer, and they don't have. I mean, granted, they probably have. There's evidence that they have like 50,000 N100s or whatever the NVIDIA new chipsets are that are illegal in China because we have some embargo that we don't want other countries to have our Western, technology.
That's from Alex Wang, right?
That's partially why NVIDIA's stock dropped 20% because they figured out how to run this thing on GPUs and regular computer systems and RISC architecture. So this is a system that doesn't need to be run on a cloud, you can run it yourself. When you say
Yeah.
run offline, what that means
The
is
old
that,
school way, right?
well, everyone can have their own calculator. Everyone can have their own. You can train it however you want.
It's like
I mean,
everything
that's
everything is a live service now, and so
except
like
for DeepSeek.
exactly. So it's the old school way of
DeepSeek
doing
is straight up, yeah, it's straight up transparency because you get to see exactly. That's what I was saying with what's interesting about watching it. Even if ChatGPT has some sort of internal monologue, you can't see the internal monologue ChatGPT is happening, and it doesn't think the same way. It doesn't just look like the way that DeepSeek works is it learns what is true. It tests and verifies, and it builds knowledge based on experience. So it really is as close as possible to something that you could learn. I don't know, when we say psychological operation, it gets kind of confusing because the basic point here is that this is a psychology, this is a psychological system, and it's actually putting together logos into a psyche. It's something that we can interact with, and we can train it. So it's interesting because this is a bigger deal than people realize. I mean, obviously some of the billionaires got it because the stock market started to drop over this, right? But there's more to it than that. It's that all of a sudden the entire service economy that live services wanted, they're putting people out of work on purpose so that they can convince businesses eventually that they need AI. It's the same thing that drug dealers do. Drug dealers give you free drugs, and then they make you addicted to the drug, and now you have to pay for the drug. That's what AI services are, right? And they realize now that people can home grow.
Yo, dude, I'm about to drop. I already said I was gonna drop like $3,000 on a tower and just run my own like language model locally. And I mean, if it could go multimodal, it'll be my slave, I guess, my household little robot.
It'll be like you're her.
Yeah.
I hate to full on plug somebody, but if you check out Matthew Berman's channel here, he has a code here where you can get like $300 or $400 off of a service from some super server system that will run whatever you want on their big iron over a cloud. And this is a pretty
run responsibly,
hybrid.
guys. Run responsibly.
Yeah, right. But this is kind of a good idea because if you can't afford right away a $3,000 tower, and not like, hey, if you can build yourself a solid system with multiple GPUs that actually are able to do the processing, cool. But there are tons of these businesses that have all this big iron. Yeah, and you can pay them like $100 a month to have access to a supercomputer.
Yeah, I have
right.
An
and so
server. That's how I run my 24/7 streams. Sorry, what were you saying?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think that's like I think it's going to be interesting to see the hybridization of this because, imagine the difference between in the old days you had like repairmen, and repairmen could come repair a system for you, and now you have to take your car into the Toyota certified dealership because Toyota certified dealers have the special electronic parts that only Toyota dealers know how to use. They've locked people into the service economy. And if it was Linux, right, then all of a sudden we'd have a certain amount of freedom again. This open sourcing means anybody can provide that service for you. You can hire any repairman. You can use anybody's refrigerator. I think this is a thing that kind of upsets people because they're all gung-ho that they hate communism. They hate China. They hate Marxism. And they think that over there's no free speech. It's just this horrible place. And yet, am I confused here? Because it feels like
I think, Andreas, it comes down to the evil you know is better than the evil you don't.
Well, I mean, there's an like politics aside, there's an inherent problem with like open source models, right? It's the same thing with Linux. Like if you invent like a potato printer, like something that copies potatoes, someone's gonna be like, oh, this is perfect. Now I could just print as many fucking potatoes as I want and give them out. But then someone's like, yeah, but what if we printed it out and copied it with sour cream on it? Who doesn't like sour cream? Then someone else is like, all right, well, we should add chives onto it, and we should add like cheese, and we should add a whole bunch of shit where it's like only 20% potato, and they're just like printing out these monstrosities, and everyone's like just with like these monstrous potatoes. That's what happened to Linux, actually. So
yeah, totally. I mean, like when Linux first hit the scene, everyone was like, this is great. We can all do these businesses. And you have to look at when Linux happened also, because you have to look at the 1984 antitrust suit against Bell Labs. Bell Labs, the creators of Unix. and they needed an operating system that wasn't technically controlled by Bell Labs. And what was the promise of the antitrust case? That anybody could do the things that Bell was doing. Before that point, only Bell could do the things Bell were doing, and universities and military contracted companies working with them. So all of a sudden, there was an essential need for Unix that was not Unix. And so they created something that does exactly the same thing as Unix. And boom, the service economy expanded. Anybody could offer a computer system, and more importantly, a big iron, right? This is why Apache servers happened. And the internet, being able to have websites and people connecting to them, is hugely tied to the open source Linux movement, because Apache servers made it possible to have multiple virtual systems that were running at the same time that any system could access, and competitive prices. You didn't have to rely on just IBM's train, basically,
Oh, what, you're gonna mute out just like that? Leave us hanging?
Well, no, I was just thinking about it. I didn't want to always, talk so much that I cut off everyone else. I mean, and also
Andreas, I like your brain. Keep talking.
And Andrew Vega, who was here a second ago, and hopefully he'll return. He's been doing a bunch of Red Note app stuff. You guys remember this story that TikTok was banned for a day, and so Americans were looking for an alternative, and they found this.
So
other
it wasn't. I want to make it clear. It wasn't just. It wasn't just TikTok. It was everything under its parent company. I am a user of a program called CapCut. I paid for it for the year, and it completely got
CapCut
yeeted.
Was taken out.
Yeah. So unless you're using a VPN or you're in another country, you can't use CapCut within the United States.
I'll tell you what, though, what's really interesting is I don't get that same effect that everyone's been getting from Red Note. They're like, oh my God, it's like a whole new world just talking with Chinese people. And I'm like, in New York, you could just fucking walk down Canal Street and you'll get plenty of Chinese.
Well, dude, these people probably don't go out and socialize with people, right?
That's true. But
exactly.
This is
also being more interesting because these are Bylon.
Yeah, but
right. When you want to experience a culture, what's the best way to do it? Is it online, or is it to go immerse yourself in it and experience it?
Well, for me personally, it was martial arts schools, because so many Chinese.
Yeah, but that's you immerse yourself in it, right?
Yeah, it is. I was also saying it's like a New York thing. So everyone from the East, past the East Coast, they're it's almost like they're alienated from East Asian culture. Even Asians in California, for example, they're way less Asian than the Asians on the East Coast.
Listen, man, I get it, dude. I sympathize with the Asian. I'm a Jew.
Oh, you don't have to sympathize with Asians. I mean, Asians are fucking. They're all right. They're fine. You can make fun of them. They're okay. They'll
well, no, I have cousins who are. Well, I'm Indian, so technically Asian.
In the 1960s, Tang Ping laying flat with a Chinese slang that was really, saying we need to get over the 996 working hour system regarded as a rat race with diminishing returns. And Bylon has really taken off, the idea of let it rot. So laying flat, Tang Ping, and Bylon, let it rot. So a lot of Chinese are saying, hey, we're disgusted with the progressiveness of our society that's hyper-capitalist anyway, and it's leading towards not necessarily a Maoist futurism like we were promised. I think Kurt recently said, we could all have chickens. That's the real revolution. And there's some truth to this idea that if we had our own food, that cuts out a lot of what the control mechanisms are. Memory Man uses CapCut. Hey, Memory Man, you be careful. The communist.
Yeah, bro. I am like, if you're gonna give me an editing program and throw something in my hand, it is CapCut. I can train anybody on it. I've trained many people on it. It's a fantastic program. I am using Filmora. If you're in the States right now, Filmora is a great alternative. I've been using it. I've been teaching people with it. It's almost the exact same, except the functions are not as good, but they're probably going to be changing it. So just a heads up, there is an alternative if you're kind of left holding the bag, and DaVinci and the other programs are either or the learning curve is ridiculous. So just a heads up, there is hope. So don't stop creating, guys. There is always a way to create.
Well, I always recommend Kden Live, actually, if we're going to talk about open source software for a second. Kden Live is a really amazing editing tool. I've done some pretty good videos with this software.
Is it paid or is it free?
It's not just free. It's free as in speech, not just free as in beer. So you can take this code and write new code with it. There's even a Kden Live. What's your favorite editing program? Let's say Premiere, GitHub. You can actually use Kden Live. You can actually use the exact same interface that you're used to with Final Cut Pro or DaVinci or Premiere. It'll make the entire program look like the other program, which is pretty base. Pingtrip made it.
Andreas, we have to take some time for you to teach me something, man.
Dude, I'm a fan of the open source technology, and so this is something. I mean, I'm curious what you think about this, Pingtrip. Good to see you again.
I don't know what you weirdos are talking about, dude. You just sent me this link, so
Communist China released
bro.
Look how beautiful you are. I just want to make them see you. No, but Communist China just released this DeepSeek thing, right? And we've been talking about how with this, we're supposed to think that China is this horrible censoring place, but here they've released code that you can run on your own system. You can train on any data about Tiananmen Square you want, and then it can know everything without any censorship. So why is China producing the free speech alternative when we're trying to build some nuclear autarky that's going to run ChatGPT service economy that we're enslaved to?
Do you know the worst part about being Chinese? Actually, I'm not Chinese, but from what I've observed,
in the microwave.
From what I've observed, right? It's just to be Chinese in China. It's like you have no fucking identity. You are literally one bland face among a sea of bland faces. It's not like that in America. As an Asian in America, I could honestly say, hey, I'm an individual. It's very easy for me to stick out and to quote unquote be somebody. Could you imagine how much harder that is in China, especially if you're poor? Like, holy shit, it's like probably hell. You know, like you're probably seen as like subhuman with no real identity. So that being said, it's like no wonder why they would no wonder why they have a repressed desire to like speak out in like unique and nuanced ways. It would drive me fucking nuts.
Yeah.
How do we know, Andreas, that they didn't come up with some new fucking spyware that we just can't recognize? That's like some new advanced, super top secret data collection system that we just don't know is there.
Well, because they do it openly all the time. There's no reason to make it a secret. Then here's the irony is that with ChatGPT, you're more likely to have your ChatGPT scraped by China because your computer has all sorts of Chinese parts in it that have deepware in it that can see exactly what you're doing anyway, versus this thing, which you can run on a Raspberry Pi without any internet. So you could have this thing completely off the grid, right? And if it knows that you're talking about Tiananmen Square, whatever, right? You're not in China. They can't do anything about it. But it's kind of the point that at least you have access to offline, run your own system. This is a liberating technology. It's so liberating that the stock market is crashing for all these companies that thought, hey, we're going to replace human workers. We're going to completely have these, because companies want to pay $200 a month for a service economy for these online live services and not pay $2,000 a month for some worker. It's as simple as that. And they knew that they were going to make all that money. And all of a sudden out of China comes this system that really you could do it at home yourself. You could actually get hired to do it.
So it puts that capability that they wanted just like big companies to be able to have into regular ass people's hands, right? Is what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. It feels like that.
How in the long run, I don't think there's maybe China just wants to be the leader in this shit. So they're like, this is how we become the leader. And in the long run, obviously this is going to benefit China in some way, which is fine. If they produce quality for the world, then they should benefit from it, right?
Well, okay, let's go on that. Like hypothetically, how do you think giving away for free code to the whole world so that they can do it themselves anywhere is going to benefit China? What do you think is the angle?
The same way you make anything that's good and you want people to use it, you give it to them free and you earn their trust. And people
I think you're being a bit too altruistic there.
I'm just fucking spitballing. There's no reason for China to do this out of the kindness of their heart. There's going to be some way that they benefit. And it might be a legitimate way of just being the leader in AI that everybody trusts and goes to because they know they're not going to get fucked over.
I see it more that it's a disruptive technology that is a Sputnik moment because Sputnik wasn't the most powerful computer. It wasn't
somebody read a playbook.
But first, wasn't this supposed to be on the menu? Like, wasn't there supposed to be a vertical progression where weird, crazy shit like this happens basically on the regular?
This is inevitably supposed to be expected, but most people in the West have been. I'm sorry, propagandized in the West, mind controlled in the West, Stockholm syndrome in the West to capitalism. And we have this idea that communism, aka sharing information with each other, is the most sinister, evil thing besides pedophilia.
Well, communism is
and
a
that
lot more than
capitalism,
sharing information with each other, Andreas.
sure,
Yeah, that's
but
not
like,
communism.
But isn't it interesting that out of the West comes the service live economy and the enslavement of humanity and
Well, because
people
we don't really have
sweeping rumba
capitalism,
shops?
Andreas. We don't really have capitalism, so it's not fair
This is
to
true.
compare our bullshit fucking corporate.
And they don't have
captured
communism,
capitalism.
or what? What am I supposed
They
to do
have
with
they
this?
have a light communism light.
Well, then so do we, I guess. I mean, you know, it seems like we
Well,
have a more
No, we have
Soviet
laced
Stalinist state.
communism. We have like communism
We-
laced with meth or something.
But we're a hybridized system. We mutually feed off each other. Like it's an exchange. So like they're not
It's a
pure
symbiotic relationship.
communism can only really truly be communism if it's global, because otherwise it has to play with others.
Yeah, actually, I was just talking to Vega about this. I was saying how there has to be like capitalism and socialism is never going to work unless there's some kind of spiritual component. You know, otherwise there's like every other redundant difference could just get in the way. You know, it's like,
So you're saying people need morals?
I mean,
Like that?
like morals are more like cerebral, I think, right? It's more
Yeah.
about like ideology. I'm talking like literally on a
We have fentanyl-laced communism in the West. Yeah, I agree.
on a spiritual basis. It's like if for example, like if you look at the concept like everyone's the same soul living out different lives in different bodies, well, then we're all intrinsically connected. It's that easy. If I hurt you, if I hurt you, I hurt me. If you hurt me, you hurt you. And it's like such a simple thing. If we all adopted it, that would be like, in a sense, kind of like a metaphysical communism.
I think capitalism could work. I think capitalism is still the greatest fucking system.
Of course, there's a
need
problem. There's a problem for
guardrails,
like,
you know.
yeah, I was gonna say there's gonna be gatekeepers towards like spiritual awareness with like religions, you know, like with the
Yeah.
Christians and the Jews and the Muslims, and they all want their little slice of that kingdom, you know. And
What do you guys
Capitalism
think?
absolutely works. Capitalism
like-
is still the best fucking system. The problem is
Yeah, but
you
you
have to
spelled
have
a capital, so it's a different kind of capitalism.
you have to have antitrust. With capitalism without antitrust is like always going to fail. It's always going to
elaborate. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? This all
need
started because of
competition.
IBM's antitrust
If
and
you don't
Google's
have
antitrust.
competition and a capitalist, you don't have capitalism if you don't have competition. So when you have corporate capture of government to the point where companies can become monopolies, and what they're smart at doing now is they don't just become a monopoly. They'll keep it to like 3 companies, and then they'll price fix behind the scenes, and they'll essentially work together as if they were a monopoly without being a monopoly, so they can skirt around those things. So we need antitrust to be more aggressive and really start going after industries. Once winners start coming out of an industry and you got 2 or 3 big companies and the small companies can't compete anymore, that's when government needs to step in and go, okay, this antitrust needs to step in. We need to break these companies up. And we need one of the few things we need the government to do is to, an honest government is to constantly be focused on how to create more competition in the market. And what we have is a government that does the exact opposite at every chance it can, because it's taking money from big fucking corporations. So yes, capitalism is failing, and it's the result of a corrupt government that doesn't give a fuck about the people and it just wants to make money.
See, but the thing about that is communist China has more capitalism and free enterprise than the United States. If I want to go prostitute myself or sell gasoline in the United States, I need a union, I need Tinder, or what's the app? I forget. OnlyFans or what, you know what I mean? There's systems of corporate oligarchy to pimp you out.
Whores are more free. Good. Okay, I'm glad.
Well,
Freedom
no, I'm just
for
saying.
whores.
I'm saying. Well, let's use gasoline again as an example. If I want to sell gasoline in the United States, do you have any idea how hard it is? Like worse than a liquor license to be a gas station. If I want to sell gasoline in China, I go stand on the corner next to the hookers.
That's part
and
of the
I can actually just have a
shit.
gas can and sell gasoline for free,
Yeah.
for whatever price I want. They keep the overhead low. So
That's
China
a
has
result
free
of our
enterprise.
corrupt government, dude. That's not
And
that's not the way capitalism is supposed to work. That's what happens when
Well-
corporations buy off politicians and set regulations that make it so nobody can ever get to their level to fucking compete. Our whole tax code is backwards. We're supposed to have a progressive tax code that taxes people more as they make more money. Corporations that are the richest fucking people in the world, they're paying shit in taxes. That's completely
How
backwards.
can even Trump?
Yeah,
doesn't want
but they
that. We
also
the
have
lowest
lawyers
taxes
to
for
help
corporations.
them figure that kind of stuff out. They have
Yeah,
more.
and it's all
They
on
have more
purpose.
access to resources than the everyday man, so they know how
Exactly.
to skirt
And
the
that's on
system.
purpose, though. But that's on purpose. That's not the way it's supposed to be. if we have a tax code in capitalism, it's supposed to be progressive, right? So like it's
I don't
supposed
know
to
about that
incentivize-
because
it's
if you
supposed to
say that,
incentivize small companies to be able to not be taxed hardcore and to be able to compete, right? Like if you're smart and you're creating a tax code and you want competition, you go, okay, how do we make a tax code that's friendly to small businesses, to people so can invest and start a business and can actually survive and maybe make it to compete with the big businesses. But our tax code right now fucking kills small businesses.
See, I want to highlight a key word. What you said right now. I think things will be changing in a better direction in the next 4 years.
Get rid of income
and
taxes.
you know, from what I'm seeing, the regulations and things like that, they may be hit. So there is hope for America. We just need to make sure to keep our foot in the gas.
but that's not the way it's moving. Trump's lowering taxes for the multi-million-dollar corporations because otherwise.
But he's also trying to get rid of income tax for Americans, is he not?
Yeah,
true.
You can get rid of income. I think the perfect system is to get rid of income tax for anybody like that earns a reasonable amount of money. And then once you start getting into the hoarding wealth levels of money, like 150 million a year, 100 million a year, then you just fucking tax the fuck out of them to ensure that they're not hoarding.
Yeah,
wealth
but then that creates a hostile environment for companies that are, because you want people to invest in your city, state, or wherever, right? You want to give them incentives to do so. So I do think there is a purpose to it. Do I think it's being abused? 100%. Do I think we can find a happy medium? Yes.
I think the answer is we need to go back to our old school economy where it's local small businesses basically everywhere instead of a couple businesses just running everything. And I think that's antitrust. And it's also changing the tax code, getting rid of regulations that are put there by corporations to keep fucking small businesses from ever being able to compete against them.
Well, what's the incentive then for a small business to try to become Bell or Google? Because that's the reason why
that's not the incentive, right? Their incentive is to open a business.
Place. Most of these guys want to start a business where they can have $100 or $96 million given to them.
But how many people expect that, right? Everybody knows it's going to take time.
No, you have to go into business with the assumption that you're going to try to make more and more money, because the truth is the value of your dollar is also going down. So it's like, it's not just getting taxed. You're also getting kneecapped in ways where it's like every year your dollar is just getting like its value is literally depreciating. That's just, it has to, you know? So because our
Coughlin's law from.
Yeah. So our economy basically runs off of debt. And the thing is, like, when you're running a business, no matter what, you're going to be in debt. No matter what, like even if you are profiting it personally, like you're still gonna always be on like a balance sheet or something. So, you know, like we could say like we could move around all these like tax rules and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, if our money is toxic, if it's literally like a toxic way for us to store our energy, then it's all gonna go to shit. It's like it's just not.
There are two kinds of people. There are workers and there are hustlers. The workers never hustle and the hustlers never have to work. That's the way of things. And if we continue to tax the rich instead of to help the poor, that's the two dynamics. If we create a system that de-incentivizes the rich from becoming rich, then why would you work hard towards richness? This is why so many corporations move.
People need to see the light at the end of the tunnel they need to see the carrot on the stick.
$20 from Steve Hawkins saying that money is fake and
lame. I agree with
Thank
that.
You,
it is
give me all your fake
lame.
money, everyone. Thank you.
Dude,
but it has the value we attribute to it. So I would not say it's fake. I would say that it is a figment of our imagination, but it's
you're real to me.
Clearly a magic spell.
No, money is
definitely fake.
No, money is a technology. Money is science. However, the way we have our monetary system set up, it's broken. It's fucked up. The way the federal bank could just like inject cash into the economy by just printing shit out, and the way they could control interest rates, and that's literally going to affect your investments. That's going to affect your assets. That's going to affect your debt. It's going to affect everything. So like, I mean, it's fucked. And it's not bad.
We should go back to a gold-based system because that means there was trust with whatever it was backed.
The only thing that money needs to do is regulate resources. That's its only true function. Anything else is just power acquisition.
Money is just a tool for fucking trade. That's all it is. It's a tool.
Yeah, but that's what trade is. It's regulation of resources. You can only trade as much as you have, and if you overtrade, it's a problem. If you undertrade, it's a problem. The thing is, once it becomes a power tool, then it loses all its real meaning. How much gold you have, okay, you pile up gold and then you have more power than other people, I guess, but the real function of gold isn't piling it. That's not why it's valuable. That's just more meaningless stuff that we assign to it. The real value is, do we have the resources? If we have more gold than resources, then gold is useless. You know, like, it's just, if we have no resources, what the fuck is the point of gold? We can't eat
You're
it.
right. You can't eat gold.
I'm not
This
trying
is this is my biggest issue with like so many people being like, yeah, you know, the COVID, we need to buy gold. I'm like, all right, if the economy goes to crap, are you gonna trade a coin for a sandwich?
Like,
What are you gonna do?
Talking about fucking money, guys.
You trade all your bitcoins. Trade all your bitcoins for a bit of water in the desert, you know.
Well, yeah, not to
But
shill
and that's
Bitcoin,
what
but
I'm
Bitcoin
saying.
is, like, the
People need
closest
to
thing we
think
get.
realistically. In those situations, you need to
Right.
buy tradable goods.
So I think that we need a bigger discussion about power distribution as opposed to monetary distribution, because they shouldn't be connected. I mean, it should, like, food and water and resources should be for all humans. That should just be the standard. And then when it comes to who has actual power, well, that has to be determined by more than who hoards the most, because that's just a problem. It's the end of humanity if we keep going that way, I think.
Yeah. We got
No, and I also think that if you were to do a system like that, the people who don't have power will be chosen by everybody. You know, it will happen naturally. Leaders will pop out who you didn't think were leaders, and I think it's a good system.
Well, the thing is that the problem is that it degrades into tribalism, because it goes, okay, well, we disagree on the leader.
Everything
Well,
does.
Honestly,
right. So it's like, when you have power that stops being distributed to a lot of people, it centralizes power, right? And that solves a lot of problems, but it creates a whole lot of problems too.
No,
we
we
just
have a-
don't have responsible
we have a solution though. It's honestly, like, I'm not trying to shill this stuff, and I'm not telling people to buy it, but Bitcoin as like a technology is the closest we'll get to like successfully pretty much turning like money, like a successful currency, into a commodity. And
Maybe.
like I don't know what else is out there, I mean, there's like,
But
there's no
Bitcoin's not fake too.
Yeah, well, Bitcoin is fake.
all
It's
money
only
is
going to
fake.
be worth.
You guys
That's the
understand?
thing. That's
money-
the thing. But resources are real. Bitcoin is a number on a screen.
and
But
also,
if you
look
have
at
a field of
Bitcoin
bananas,
is okay. All right,
I'd
let's start with
rather
what's the concept?
chickens than Bitcoins.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
listen, I'll
here's the
tell
thing.
you.
Bitcoin's a
I will
contract
tell you, there
between
are
two
things
pre-agreeing
I
parties.
value in my life, items, pictures, books, that are worth more to me than a Bitcoin or
Nah.
whatever.
See, no.
It's-
But the thing
I
is, no.
understand.
There's,
Bitcoin's
no, that's a good argument.
$100,000.
That's a good argument. But I would argue that what I value over things like objects, I value energy. And guess what? Every time you work, you're expending energy. When you make money for your work, you're storing that energy. And dollars doesn't fucking cut it. Bitcoin does. For example, let's say you want to like store years of effort working in like China as a fucking farmer, and then you want to go to the United States. Well, if you're going to put that money into a bank and take it all the way across the seas so that you could convert it, that's going to that's basically fucking you. You're getting a raw deal out of that. However, if you convert your currency into Bitcoin, take that Bitcoin overseas and convert that into USD, well, guess what? You just like subverted a whole bunch of centralized power, so it works. People do it all the
Which is
fucking
why
time.
they want to put regulations on it.
Yeah.
But
Well,
that's not
eventually,
you can't really do that. It doesn't work.
eventually,
now.
it'll face obsolescence after a long period of regulation and people
There he
exploiting
is.
it.
Look how
But-
ripped he is. This guy, like, he lifts, bro. Look at that.
Bro, this guy lifts his bike. He just lifts his bike alone.
No,
like a
someone
lift.
lifts
But
his
look,
blocks all day.
bro.
what I find interesting about the discourse with money is that it is very like human centric. I wonder what happens if we reach exopolitical levels, like off planet politics and diplomacy. Then where will our resources really matter? Like let's say even if we start colonizing Mars, and then they have their own economy, and then we go in, well, we value Bitcoin, and they go like, yeah, we value, like, I don't know, the green rocks we find on Mars.
That is a very good point. What happens when humanity expands to a point where it's no longer viable?
Right,
Well, I
it'll
think
face obsolescence eventually,
I think
and
this
we
happens-
might change structure.
You guys are putting too much in the fucking money. Money is fake. You guys said it, right? Money's fake.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
metaphysical.
well, I gotta pay rent, you know.
Yeah, well, listen.
My
to me. What
theory is if Mars
Sorry, go
decides
on.
to do something.
Andreas, I'll be back when
sorry.
you have like maybe
Okay.
2 or 3 people. It's
Hold
impossible.
on, wait.
It drives me
Mark,
fucking nuts when you have 6
Wait,
fucking
wait,
people.
hold
doing
on.
it.
Let
Can't say
give the
anything.
man a shot. Give him a shot. Say it. Go ahead. Say it. I like how you get aggressive.
No. My theory is right.
No,
if
it's
we go to
Superman,
Mars,
Superman.
No,
Let
wait.
Mark-
Let
Mark-
Pink Trip say.
Yeah, Mark wants to say.
No, go ahead. He's
Oh, yeah, I apologize.
I'll
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Green. I'll talk
Relax.
after you.
Just, no, Mark, jump in here. It's okay.
Okay, well, I mean, just money. Everybody knows money's fake, right? But yet we're also obsessed with money. What money? We could use fucking toilet paper for money if we wanted to. Money is just something we all agree to represent what is real value.
Just
And
like
what is
time.
real value?
Well,
What
it's a
has real
contract.
value?
It's
Life
a
energy.
contract.
Contracts don't have value. What has real value?
Energy.
Agreement.
Energy,
Art.
food, production.
Lifespan that
Your
you
time.
spend.
Yeah, life
Yeah.
force labor.
Yeah.
Money doesn't
Time-
fucking
time
matter.
labor.
We could, as long as we have enough of something, we can designate it a currency. We can use fucking
Bottle
apples.
caps.
Yeah, anything that can last. Like metal's good because it lasts a long time.
No, but if you look at human,
Anything
but if you look at human
currency.
history, that's happened. I mean, we've had countries use glass beads for currency, and then
Exactly.
other
It's
countries were like,
currency.
"Yo, we can make that. We can make
Is
our
there
own glass
something
bead."
we all agree to that makes our lives easier, because if you go back to bartering, it's a pain in the fucking ass, right? So society goes, okay, at a certain point, this bartering is getting kind of old. I'm tired of having to fucking figure out how many skins I got to bring to the market in order to get what I need. Let's all come up with a currency. That's all currency is. It's all the society,
Yeah.
the community going, hey, let's take this rock, this special little rock that grows here, and let's fucking create that and make sure there's enough of it for the society to trade, and we all agree that this represents value. That's all fucking money
Right.
is. It can be
Right.
anything. It can be Bitcoin, it can be toilet paper, it can be shit. As long as there's a problem with gold, is that there's not enough gold to be a legitimate currency. So people want to back up money, but there's not enough actual gold out there. Well, you might go ahead. I've already talked enough. There might be some
Well-
speculations about that,
well,
but I've
let's
heard
You know,
all the
sorry,
gold
but
in the world
Superman-
will
Superman
fit
was
in
gonna say
one
that.
Olympic-sized swimming pool. Go ahead.
Superman, sorry. go ahead.
No, I agree with what was said. I mean, what I think would happen is we would go to trade, and then it would morph into currency, because that's the progress of humanity.
Yeah. Also, I think it comes in waves. For example, like if we have like a decentralized monetary system, then we really don't have to worry about a monetary system at that point. But then like you said, when you scale it out to like, all right, well, what if we colonize space in our abundance? And then suddenly like the need for currency is going to come back up. The need for capital is going to need to come back up, because it's like there's vaster, exponentially more resources that you're going to have to like organize some way.
Well, you've got right
Yeah.
now a tariff war going on between BRICS and brick and bloc. All right, so the European Union's the bloc, the BRICS is the Russian system that's being created, and the Atlanticist alliance between the West, between America and European Union, has basically made the Amero, which is the United States dollar, the petrodollar. So the petrodollar, and in between this now we have Bitcoin. And Bitcoin's interesting because while all these other systems are super hyper inflatable, Bitcoin is a credit ledger that is a smart contract. Because really, when we're looking at in between between a dollar, between a ruble, you're going to want to have a contract that you can trust, that you know can't be forged by somebody else, because you basically are just using bond certificates. And these the Bitcoin is a certificate that says two mutually agreeing, completely free parties have agreed on some exchange of whatever values. And you're talking about values like gold or time or whatever you want. These are all values that are being exchanged, but they require some sort of a ledger that keeps a record of this crazy number with a witness for the exchange. You have a witness for the exchange, so you know that this truly was two agreeing parties. One of them didn't have a gun to their head, right? And the problem with that is that Bitcoin is built around a computer system that is, on one hand, incentivizing the end of industrial revolution. We haven't quite, revolution's a full circle. We haven't quite gotten to the end of the industrial revolution yet, which is to remove entropy to the finest point where everything is, quantum computers are coming. And that meant that Moore's law was slowing down. Corporations were trying to slow down how much technology they could sell because they knew they were coming to this point. And with Bitcoin, it became more important to make Bitcoin than to sell computers. They're trying to get to the point where they can make Bitcoin for this exchange. However, quantum computers, it seems pretty obvious, will be able to crack any kind of code, any password, any lock that you have, including Bitcoin security. And it's not long. It's maybe 10 years, probably more like 5, that we have until Bitcoin is broken. And when that happens, how can you rely on your Bitcoin? I mean, it's going to hit $1 million and then it's going to go to zero. Like, what are we going to do when you can't actually rely on an actual Bitcoin security ledger? Because we have reached a point where the SHA 256 is broken in mere milliseconds. And maybe that's in the 2030s. But even right now, we have computers at Google and in China and all over the world they're building. What do you think Stargate is going to be able to do? It's going to be able to break Bitcoin. So how can you even rely on any sort of ledger for an agreed trade?
Well, if everyone's a millionaire, no one's a millionaire. You know, like you can't have everyone have their own yacht, their own mansion. It's like it's not enough resources. If we keep making the number bigger and bigger and bigger, eventually it loses its value.
The immutability of the relationship between commodities and money is mainly reflected in the function of money as a measure of value and a means of circulation. The creation and development of money is closely related to the circulation of commodities. On the basis of the barter, commodity circulation gradually develops into an advanced stage of commodity exchange, and money is gradually produced in this process. The functions of money include the measure of values and the means of circulation, which are an embodiment of the invariance of the relationship between money and commodities. Value scale function of means and circulation. Marxist political economy holds that money is a product of the development of the commodity economy to a certain stage and is used as a special commodity that acts as a general equivalent. The function of the value measure and the function of the means of the circulation of money do not require the entity of money when embodying the general equivalent, but are carried on at different forms of money. This might sound like a lot of thought right here from this LLM from China and the Baidu search engine, but really what it's saying is that the economy itself, there's a reason why China was able to keep its value of its yuan so low, so long, that so many people could invest in China, to the point that they bought all of our dollars, right? So that we would have each citizen owes $100,000 essentially worth to China now, right? This is because of the value. They could actually say, each according to their resource, that we value a resource. If we decided we want to put so much energy into making Bitcoin, or to advancing computers, or to building cities, we can actually reappreciate the value of something. And all of a sudden, steel becomes worth more or less depending on what we're going to use it for. It's no longer the value of steel as an innate commodity. It's out of the resource that we're going to use it to build a city that will have billions of people or millions of people that will eventually produce all these resources for us in the future. It's labor. It really is. It's labor that is the value that is exchanged. And that's Marxism. Right. So it seems to me like we're basically getting back to Das Kapital when we use Bitcoin. Everyone who's saying that they hate Marxism so much.
Did I not say we were supposed to oscillate? It's oscillationism. It's literally flowing between like hyper-capitalism then to like Marxist realism. And it's going to keep going this way as we go through different stages of humanity. Like I said, like we're getting to that point where capitalism is just going to evolve into like ideally like some kind of like socialist utopian kind of deal. And then after that, yeah, we're going to need like capital again. Once we start, if we make it to colonizing space.
I do want to ask
value.
It's funny that I was going to say I do want Andrew to speak on this, and then Andrew started speaking. Just keep going.
I think that currency retains its value when it's spent. You know, we know how much something is worth when we exchange it with someone, with someone for a product, a service, et cetera, and what sucks the energy out of money is like hoarding it, like not spending it. Just maybe if
no, this is what this is.
Look,
sorry, this is why
the thing is that
I was going to say real quick. This is why scammers are a good thing. They stimulate the economy.
The thing is that one of the major problems with our current economic structure is that we have trade for the sake of trade, as opposed like we'll take resources from one place, send them to another place because that's the deal the two companies have, instead of just leaving that resource there for the people there to eat it. And we're just going to trade it for the sake of trading, wasting resources, wasting gasoline, wasting oil, so we can have exotic apples from a certain part of the country, even if we have apples here. And we'll do the same with everything. We'll put in things in products for the sake of putting it in, because it's a monetary exchange between corporations. So they'll put milk in every single thing just for the sake of putting milk in everything, so that guy over there gets his piece and you get your piece, and then the money is in circulation. Most people aren't hoarding money. Their money is in liquid assets. They're constantly moving the money, because that stimulates the growth of the money. The number, not the economy, not the amount of resources. The amount of resources stays the same. What changes is just how much the number grows, and then people have more of the number, and that's it.
Well, let's not forget about the black
all the
market.
debt.
Like, there's plenty of like stuff like cocaine trade, the drug trade.
That's what Bitcoin was sort of founded on, right?
Yeah,
human trafficking and drugs.
Yep.
And paying agents overseas, right? Which
there was also the Silk Road shit. Apparently,
that was also just the regular money, though. Like, they use regular money for that too. So
yeah, but it's like what Chris said about exchanging money through Bitcoin means circumventing all sorts of tax laws. So if you're an agent overseas and they can send you a crypto. Yes, you there, can
we start a fucking hand raising situation here? Because it's annoying. Everybody talks over each other. It's a little annoying, and I don't know when to say anything because I don't want to talk over anybody. You guys
like
really
it when you
believe? Do you guys really believe that we're borrowing money from China to pay for things? Do you really believe that?
No.
What do you mean by that?
You said we owe China all this money. Every citizen owes China money.
Well, that's a way of representing the debt that the United States has to China, the amount of dollars, right?
That's a big conspiracy that pisses me off. This idea that America is sitting here borrowing money from China. No, we're creating money out of thin air. We're not borrowing money from China. We owe money to China because they buy treasury bills. And the interest on those treasury bills, because they have all this cash, they just keep buying treasury bills. So the money we owe them is the interest on the treasury bills they buy, which we should end that fucking program. We don't need to be offering that anymore. That's a throwback to like World War II. So this idea that we owe China money and we're in debt to China, I think it's just a way for the government to tell people like, oh, we can't help you because we're broke. Meanwhile, we can give all this money to all these other fucking countries.
Yeah,
it's a bullshit. It's not real in any way that we owe money. We owe interest on the treasury bills that China buys, but we're not borrowing money from them every time we spend. We fucking create it out of thin air, which is not a problem if we have a healthy economy and a reasonable system to create money, not overly create money, basically.
But we've given China buying power, which is representative of $100,000 per person, essentially. And they're able to use that to get 100-year leases of land in the Midwest or apartment buildings or own fractions of businesses. Yes, you the fancy goatee.
I'm trying not to do the Elon Musk thing.
My heart goes out to you, dude.
Solidarity, bro. Yeah.
You know, like the people in China, like, I mean, what it really is it's a representation of the power they have over us, and I think that's used to keep us in fear on this side and make them feel like they have power over us over there. America keeps telling us, oh, we're in debt to China, and then they keep telling China we're in debt to them, but the power dynamic doesn't really change. You know, like the amount of nukes doesn't change. The amount of the capacity to just pull money out of their ass doesn't change. So
the whole economy relies on ours. Yeah.
So it's a symbolic thing more so than anything, like a sort of Damocles hanging over our head that in the future there's going to be a war over it. Basically, going, hey, we're cashing in the debt. And it's like, what debt? You know, like what really what actual value are we in debt for? You know, like, what is the real value? It's they're just what, 100 trillion billion gazillion dollars, arbitrary. It's just about power.
I have a thought on that. Maybe a lot of it's going towards this transcontinental secret space program where they've been for decades and decades harvesting alien technology and just dumping trillions into space operations that we don't know.
All of this is part of the PRC zeitgeist, and I wanted Andrew to talk about it for a reason. So we talked about it last week that Red Note is the app that's happening, and I sent him with homework. I'm like, bro, go, because he said he's going through Red Note and you're talking to people and you're seeing like what the vibe is for the PRC, what these incel Chinese are saying online. What did you kind of realize this week about that, Andrew?
Well, you know, these Chinese spies are really well trained on American propaganda. You know, they have the whole system figured out. They're like, how come they haven't figured it out for themselves? Oh, it's because, you know, they've bought into the scam hook, line, and sinker of identity politics, you know, arguing about, you know, what fucking gender marker to put on your identification, when really it's one of my favorite ones was it's not left or right, it's top and bottom.
Right.
LOL. Because we really be getting topped. It's rough. That's I know that you want to dig into that, the blood bank, skin bank thing, because you know the lows are getting lower. There's even more wealth polarization happening. You know, what do we have besides our labor? You know, we have our bodily fluid.
I have something to add to that. One of my co-hosts, Brendan, he's on my podcast sometimes, and when he was like unemployed for money to make ends meet, like to pay his phone bill and stuff, he would go to this place, and he talked about it too. He would be like, I would donate my plasma, and then they would pay me like a couple $100. I was like, I got to be honest, that's like the most dystopian thing I've ever fucking heard in my life. Like, you know, it's like you're a recovering addict and you're going into this place to give up your fluid so you could get a couple bucks, so you could get just enough food and stuff so you could get a job. And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh.
Yeah, and then but then where do you get your blood? Like, there's 1 billion people in China that need blood, and apparently the West in America is where they get their blood. So you're injecting a bunch of these drug addict Caucasians' blood into the Chinese.
I didn't think about that.
What are we gonna do to those people? I mean, we're becoming one way or another. We're forcing
you know what
people
happens?
to become each other.
They become more American and stronger, like slowly through the blood.
I'm concerned you're right.
Blood brothers.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm not kidding. I think there's something to that this idea, you know, I mean, and there's more to elaborate on the idea of it's not left or right. I wanted to find that particular, you know, red note, but Andrew, you had that point down that the Chinese are looking at it saying that it's not the left or the right, it's the top and the bottom, right? That's basically the elite are controlling everybody, and everyone's are kind of equalized, and most countries have less power.
Yeah, they're like, why do you not revolt? It's like, well, first of all, there aren't billions of us.
Well, most people for a long time seem to have known that it's top down, and like, you know, that there's a problem, that the problem isn't the divide. And then eventually we got psyop back into it. We just got pushed back into that left-right dynamic. We were like, oh, Epstein completely fucking neuralized out. We really got, it feels like the West is constantly getting neuralized. Like in Men in Black, just fucking shut off our memory every 4 years. Boom, here, this time it'll work. This time it'll work. This time it'll work. But, I mean, you know, like China has its own thing, though.
Look at COVID.
I agree with you. But I do think there is hope. You have people like Andreas. You have people out there who are going and spreading those news stories. It's not as easy to hide that. How did you say, the neuralizer? You know, it's not that easy to hide it anymore. And that's why people are getting bigger and bigger, because more and more people's eyes are being open to all this.
The thing is, it's more and more obvious to anyone who's paying attention, but to people who are still, I guess, trapped in the trance. Yeah, well, it's like, you know, the neuralizer, it gets more and more sophisticated. In the story of Men in Black, the original neuralizer was basically like a TV set. Like, it was just it's basically hooked up to this TV. It's a symbol that we're all getting constantly brainwashed by this sort of thing that has everything we believe completely programmed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is why, like, I guess self-inquiry could lead to like a lot of people getting pushed to spirituality. You know, it's like, how do I break out of the simulation? It's like, oh wait, I have a soul, right? I forgot.
Yeah, I mean, this Chinese trained AI that's, you know, posting from various IP addresses across China. It's very well trained on this rhetoric. It's pretty amazing. And the
left and the right are merely adjectives.
Yeah, these are all translated from Mandarin. There was one more. I think it might have been. I tagged it in a message. I was like, "Oh, this one was the most eloquently fucking put or whatever."
Yo, Andrew,
it's all the same stuff.
You should learn how to speak Chinese, man. I think it would serve you incredibly well in life.
Yeah, you know, I could do
Chinese, Arabic, and English.
Yeah,
my understanding is that there's no distinction between left and right in this world. These terms are defined to divide the people. Capitalists are a minority, and if they stand against the people, their power appears significantly diminished. So what do? They divide the people into left and right wing, into LGBTQ, and so on, endlessly fragmenting a nation so that you cannot unite and you cannot confront them. Let me give you an example. Your country portrays our socialism as left wing, with everyone being very enthusiastic, but how do you actually feel? In reality, there is only one kind of contradiction, and that is class. contradiction.
How are they allowed to say this stuff?
Well,
No
I mean,
shit.
I used to literally troll like that back in the woke days. I used to be like, you really think like racism and sexism and all this isms matter when it's like classism is really the only thing that fucking mattered. Everyone knew this, and for some reason, like people still like spouted this narrative about social justice, and the whole time, like if you had a brain, you'd be like, this none of this shit matters. Like there's all these horrible rich people from all these horrible like different, well, all these different demographics. Are like
the only reason China would be telling their own citizens that these power structures are this bad is if they're planning for a shift in the structure of their civilization. They know that America can't keep going the way it is, and they know they can't keep going the way they are. And so eventually they're preparing their people for that shift, for that change, while America seems to be hoping people will just basically kill their own bloodlines and be replaced. But that's it. You know, like we're being herded, and the people who are more aware of stuff are being herded with their awareness. You know, like they're being told, hey, this is what you should care about. Like the Americans are caring about this. Well, if you care about this, you know everything and you know how to actually win or whatever. And it's like, no one actually knows how to win, but we're all part of this sort of programming that our civilization will give us. And China is just as programmed as us, just might be a more efficient programming.
I mean, yeah, this idea of class structural. But yeah, also, Mark, I want to ask you about class struggle. I mean, you know, you're a Marxist Maoist from Texas, right? You were talking about free capitalism.
You're talking
what
to
do you
me?
think? I was kidding about the Marxist Maoist part.
Is there another Mark here?
Pink Trip, though, you did talk about American capitalism, or at least the idea of true capitalism has never been tried. I mean, you're saying that we can have a capitalism in the world.
I didn't say it's never been tried. I said right now we have a corrupt version of capitalism that has been captured by corporations that have bought out politicians that only represent the big multinational corporations.
Isn't that class struggle? Is that class struggle to you?
Well, everything can be broken down to a class struggle, but you got to realize this is something you brought up earlier. The structure of the world is going to be very different because of the technology coming about. I think we're going to see more people being their own business, right? More self-employed. Like, so when I say businesses, I'm not just talking about groups of people. I'm talking about individuals. So you're going to see plumbers who, rather than having to work for a fucking plumbing company, can be his own business, and he can do his own advertising on social media. He can build his own fucking customers, and you don't need a whole fucking team and to be backed by all this corporate structure. It's just a dude running a business. And I think that's the future. And I think that's where we need to go. But right now, we kind of fuck over the self-employed dude like me. But like, if you're the self-employed dude just starting out and you're just making like $20,000 a year, you're fucked after taxes, dude. You're not going to survive, right? So we need to fix that, so people can start a fucking business and have those struggles at the beginning and not be taxed out of business before they become successful.
I know
things like that.
I know how to get that started. So if you really want that kind of America, at least, it has to be like basically some huge cataclysmic event that like halves our population or something. Then you'll see a lot of demand for those like self-employed can-do guys. I'm just referencing Death Stranding, by the way, the Hideo Kojima video game. That's
but I think about good.
No, I was gonna say that's what it was. It's like, yeah, it's like those porters. Those are all like essentially their self.
I love how Kojima made Metal Gear Solid talk about. It was Metal Gear Solid 2 talking about the CIA or like the military industrial complex inventing some sort of a control mechanism for contexting all truth to control truth. And then he made, right before COVID, a game about isolated quarantine people that have survived some sort of a post-apocalyptic dystopian flu virus. Good job, Hideo. Clearly that's, inspired somehow.
But I think what would happen though with that model of every like a bunch of mercenaries in every industry everywhere, which I think that's cool too. I fucking love that idea. But I think you would get like a lot of like elite guys in like a given field, and they'll start to syndicate. Like that's usually what happens. Like I know this
franchises.
From basically when I was like a bike courier, all the companies were basically just collectives of messengers that all like they were the top guys in the streets, and they were like, let's just start our own company and take over the whole game. And you would have other groups like, oh yeah, well we're gonna do that too, and that's how you kind of see this stuff.
So then you need an antitrust organization that heavily watches this shit and sees when competition starts to fucking stop happening in any given sector and step in.
I want to be that guy, by the way. I want to have a badge and a gun and be like, hey, you guys are too
That needs to be the
successful.
biggest segment in government. Needs to be the anti.
Yeah. But but because we have corporate fascism, they're colluding with the government. They write all the laws.
Amen.
We haven't had any major antitrust laws, any major ones. You could argue a few happened in the 90s, but since around the time our bank or our currency became fiat, it's like the robber barons found a way to circumnavigate all these fucking laws and continue to monopolize and.
I have personal experience with this. My father worked in telecommunications, and in the 80s they broke up AT&T, and the amount of work that gave, and the amount of the pay was insane in the 80s. Like, they needed contractors. So many companies were competing for the same contractors. They would give you a bonus. They'd be like, just we'll give you $2,000 right now if you agree to show up on this date. By the 90s, 2000s, that was all gone again, right? So what happens when you have companies that compete for workers? Prices go up. They have to be more fair to the worker because they have to actually compete for the fucking worker. So it's just common sense shit, man. Sorry.
I think what would be really like at this point a philanthropic thing to do if you had like boatloads of money, you should just like generate industries or something. Like instead of like trying to start a business, maybe just start a whole platform that people could make businesses off of. Like, hey, I didn't know this was a demand. I guess, I could like show people it's a demand. Yeah,
that's the idea. Like little everybody. These were popping up for a while, right? Uber's an example of that. Of course, they're taking advantage. I mean, that needs to be probably regulated to make sure.
That was my next thing. I was gonna say, 'cause I just got a taxi driver tonight in Vienna, and he's telling me that the government takes 10% and Uber takes 22%, and he's gonna barely be able to feed his family because he's gonna get $2 out of $10 by the end of the day. Plus, he has to worry about.
I think, sorry, Andreas, but yeah, at some point, I think we got to find a way to get rid of the platforms having control and just making it the people. It's just one-on-one, the customer and the person. But I don't know how you do that. Sorry, go ahead.
Unfortunately, I think the issue, unless we all can collectivize to run these applications or programs or whatever, it's like if we turn Uber into a co-op or some shit like that, the government in theory is supposed to be like elected representatives. Those people are supposed to fucking act in our fucking interest, and they're supposed to be the ones regulating all these fucking industries, and the companies are providing services on our behalf, and if they're subsidized by the government that we essentially pay for, then we should benefit as the consumer and as the employees of these structures, but that's not really not the case because of corporate fascism.
I have a brilliant idea. We need to create a new law where we designate parasite companies that are only there, that serve no fucking purpose other than to just make money, drain money from a system of actual production and raise the cost for the customer. And we got to figure that out. Like there's so many parasite companies that serve no fucking purpose. They're just in the chain of the commerce and make tons of money and just raise the prices for everybody. Because that's a big thing we got to fight, is we got to get prices down. So all these fucking parasite, let's make it illegal to be a parasite company.
And also controlling, like, how did Facebook get into a position to replace email? Like, what is it exactly about their system that people don't have some sort of an open ID social media that could replace it? It's been around for 20 years or something almost, and they don't have an answer to replace Facebook. That's disgusting. Well, Facebook, that we're still corporate,
Well, Facebook's power isn't within its infrastructure or even with its technology. They don't even produce anything really. What I think they have an abstracted form of power where their power isn't like, you need Facebook because of what it'll do for your life. Their power lies in your life is going to be ridiculously incomplete if you don't have a Facebook. Like, your life is just going to be that much more difficult if you don't have Facebook. And like, I think that's what all the social media platforms essentially are. They're just,
that's what Uber did to taxi drivers. They're like, you think that people are just going to wave down a taxi ever again? No, they're going to want to look at their phone forever. It's crazy that we're in a world where you would use Uber to be a taxi cab driver. It's one of the oldest professions besides prostitution itself. And you're getting corporate pimps. That's the thing. I think it's almost the craziest thing is how corporate pimps are able to exist without any sort of technological disruption. We need disruptive technologies to target these parasitic businesses. It should be basically every time you have a 5-year business, within 5 years, there needs to be something to replace that business that's an open source alternative.
Bro, where can you wave down a fucking cab other than like Manhattan? That's
Vienna.
not really realistic. Yeah, okay. But in a giant city, everywhere I've lived in my life, there's no chance of waving a cab. You have to.
All right,
fucking
that's
call
true.
them.
That's true. That's fair. You're in Texas, a big place. But yeah, I mean, still, even with that, how is it that after 5 years, there hasn't been something that has taken the business away from Uber? Because Uber becomes more and more powerful, more and more dangerous, and they're going to get to a point where drones replace the people that are not being paid enough anyway. I mean, it's crazy where we're at with these companies, because they get to, and this is what scares me about ChatGPT. They offer it to you for free. Like we said earlier, it's a drug. They give it to you for a while for free. Then the drug dealer says, now you have to start paying for it. And all of a sudden you're blowing ChatGPT in an alley somewhere for Sam Altman's watching. You know?
Actually, this is a good question, guys, because I really try to limit this. But are you subscribed to a lot of like pay services every month that you have to like?
Not many, no.
Because
I got
like
a couple right now.
Yeah, all right. Because like with AI, I see this.
StreamYard's one of them. These motherfuckers. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I pay for StreamYard. I should stop. I don't really need to. I could be using OBS.
Yeah, but then you have to. Yeah, but OBS is still a pain in the ass if you got guests, dude. Having 5
True.
guests on OBS, fuck, forget about it, dude.
I mean, they could make it easier, but you need to pay a guy to set it up. This is the thing when you're talking about the antitrust with 1984's Bell antitrust. It led to Unix becoming Linux, led to different people that all knew how to have the same skills. And we're back to a point where the service economy has certification for how to use corporate systems. And in school, they could be teaching you how to use, like Photoshop. Like instead of Photoshop, you could be learning how to use GIMP. Instead of Microsoft Office, you could be learning how to use LibreOffice. But they're training entire generations how to be corporate prostitutes, where they're going to have to constantly use the tools of these parasitic corporations. I mean, what's more disgusting than open office? The Microsoft Office.
No, that's so funny you say that, because I mean, when I first started my job like a decade ago, I was I helped set up a lot of shit for them, like emails and stuff, and like basically creating PDF templates. And I always used like open source shit. They were like, "Don't you have to pay for that?" I was like, I don't know. I just download the free.
I mean, I send them money. Like usually that's the crazy thing. When I was a kid, if anything cost any money, I would steal it. And anything was free, I would give them money because I was so proud of them. Right? Like every time. Like that's the way as Kate in live we talked about earlier.
Jesus Christ.
I am.
Well, that's the thing about that's the thing about software and shit.
I don't know if I knew either.
It's ultimately like information, right? Information is free, which is funny because when you look at like when you try to trace like a company's activities, you always say follow the money. Well, if you look at like in an information age with all these like companies that just run apps and platforms, it's like, well, follow the data. And it's all like it all leads back to the servers, which is why I think I got like interested in just hoarding computer towers and like storing shit on it and using them as like servers and stuff.
I mean, piracy is also a lot easier. Can you imagine having to have an online account every time you want to turn on your PlayStation to play a game? You have to be like logged in. Like, what if you don't have Wi-Fi? It's crazy that they have to check to make sure you have the right to a thing. I mean, it's just at a certain point, I can get it. I'm kind of in the middle here. I think it's cool to have competitive corporations. I think it's great to have enterprise. I think we need that for the disruptive technology. I think we have to have a cap on it, though. I think after most businesses have 5-year plans. Okay. And if you can make enough money in 5 years to run the world, then you end up building after 5 years, you're no longer building up your tech. You're building moats. You're building moats to keep people out. And that's where it gets scary. And that's why antitrust keeps happening. But if we set it up that basically after 5 years, your technology is open sourced, you have to move quickly with it. That should accelerate disruptive technology and make the world a better place as quickly as possible, because corporations have to work as quickly as possible to sell their product before they run out of time. I don't know if that's a perfect system, but it seems to make a lot more sense than freaking Adobe. I'm just so angry that they exist.
Shout out to Adobe, because they back in like 2021, they sold me the final release of like pay to own copy of Adobe Acrobat. It was like a 2016 edition. They were charging like $300 for it. I was like, fuck yes. Because I use this like every day for work, and there's no way in hell I was gonna like keep paying like every fucking month.
Son of a bitch. I pay $60 a month for the full suite. I'm fucked. I have no choice.
Maybe I could. Oh no, you need a serial CD.
Why don't you use the cloud cracker? I mean, what did I say?
There's ways. I'm sure there's ways, but I used to fuck with BitTorrent, but like now I'm just too worried about security. I don't want to do anything risky.
See, the thing is,
Oh, shit.
Osalt, I go to osalt.com all my life, since I was a wee lad, and everything I could ever find on there, you'd find LibreOffice, OpenOffice Writer, PDF Creator, Ghost Script is pretty cool. And then you can type in anything you want to find.
You got Premiere Pro?
Oh,
Premiere?
yeah. Well, I told you Kden Live, right? I don't know if you saw that, but Kden Live is my favorite video editing software. And yeah, I threw money at these people because it's free. This software right here is so beautiful.
It looks like Premiere.
It totally does. But if you really want it to look like Premiere, then you go to this GitHub file and you get Kden Live 2 FCP, which the title makes you think only does Final Cut, but it will make it look like DaVinci or Final Cut or Premiere or whatever you want. It'll put the entire tool set together.
How's it handle a really busy timeline? Because that's a big part for me.
It handles a really busy timeline just better than your computer would normally handle it because it has no spyware, no bloatware, no checking to make sure that you actually own the thing, which is another system that has to be running all the time, constantly wasting your system.
I shut that off. And then it's annoying because every now and then I'll load Premiere Pro and then I can't find the fonts because I have to open Adobe Cloud. And I fucking hate this shit. You're right.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And I feel like we should be fighting against it. But of course, someone might say, oh, power to the people. You sound like a Marxist. I guess that's kind of the right. Like we're kind of told we're not supposed to be. Go on.
Issue. Sorry. Yeah. It just, I mean, it's like, power in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just when it becomes hyper concentrated, it becomes dangerous, So it's about decentralizing the power, whether that power be like data or fucking money or like literal energy, like electricity or nuclear or whatever. That's why 0 point's the future. It's everywhere. It's evenly distributed amongst everything, right?
That's what scares me. It feels like they know that they, at some point, will not be able to continue to enslave humanity forever. And they're working as hard as they can to squeeze as much blood out of the rock that is the people as possible right now. Because very soon you'll have no more money to squeeze out of you, but there won't be any reason anyway because everything will be free. It's very Klaus Schwab. We're headed into this world where technology can't be. I mean, when was the last time something new happened in technology? Be honest. Like Skype, Zoom, StreamYard. Are we just kind of carrying on from Yahoo Radio back to the RTMP, real-time media protocol?
I have a response to that, by the way. There's one, I think, highly overlooked technological renaissance. That it's actually fucking annoying.
If you say grinder, no.
I was gonna say like e-bikes, like not just like electronic cars, but electric cars, but like electronic scooters, electronic bikes, like these things. I mean, they pretty much are the backbone of like delivery service industry workers, So yeah, like I think that's the one thing that I could think of that I've noticed that's like actually.
But when were brushless electric motors invented? 1889, 1888,
You're right. No.
1890. Like Nikola Tesla. So it just is, this is the thing that kills me about it. And, that Nikola Tesla with the Wardenclyffe Tower had a Niagara Falls turbine powering a wireless high energy system for his Pierce Arrow car. So he had a wireless electricity sending to his Pierce Arrow so he could drive around with electricity out of the air. This is in 1907, 1908 or something like that. This is crazy that more than 120 years ago, 115 years ago, that we had electric brushless motor cars. And in 1904 to 1908, there were more electric cars than there were petroleum cars. And we have to look at the exact same situation with Standard Oil, standardization of energy, the prohibition of alcohol, the control of everything because of ethanol. I don't know. It's just hard to pretend that these elite corporations, these elite corporate persons are the same as your like small businesses. And I hear what Mark's saying, or the Pink Trip's saying about this. Senior Pink Trip is saying about competition and competitive competition. But the problem is this whole system incentivizes finding the country where you can get the least amount of taxes so you can build up the most colonial power. It's a banana republic continuity that we're trying to build a system where, hey, this country doesn't have anything going, but we're going to move the machines there. Then you're going to have access at night to run the machines on the black market, and that'll build up your economy, and then we're going to move to Laos, right? I mean, we need a system that's more sustainable than that, I feel like.
It would work if they stopped criminalizing the competition.
Yeah, but the reason why they have like regulations and stuff is because like, for example, if you have mercenary cabbers like driving around, not beholden to like a company or a law or a code or anything, then they're gonna be like, I don't know, I might shoot another cab driver, be like, get the fuck out of my, get out of my zone.
A regulation isn't preventing you from committing murder, I hope.
Yeah,
but even
like,
then,
but it's like there's no one to fire you, when you're a mercenary. Like if you're just
is
good, you're
Japan is Japan doing good? What do you guys think about Japan? Is it the future? Are they all right? What do you think?
They need people though, badly,
my
don't they?
Yeah,
I mean, I was actually talking to Colin about this, where how like the Hopi people supposedly like transcended their physical body and just transferred to the fifth dimension or something. It's like, imagine if that's what's going on in Japan right now. Like to us, it looks like they're just dying out, but in reality, they're like transcending.
Well, I wonder about that. This is kind of the segue. Suicide rates by minors hit record highs in Japan 2024. So I think it's a total of 20,268 suicides in 2024. This was 1,569 lower than the previous year and second lowest data, but it's now up even higher with a total of 13,763 men and 6,505 women taking their lives. Something like 70% of the figure were high school students. We already knew suicide rates in Japan were bad. I think that wasn't like a spoiler.
Yeah, but we got to look into social media with this. I bet you there's some social media aspect.
What do you think? What do you mean by that?
Well, women tend to, at that age, they tend to like get into weird shit, like slashing, cutting. And, there's been studies, I'm probably not going to get the terms right or whatever, that show that like bulimia and all that, like they become epidemics because like they just like they copy each other. It's weird, right? So if that becomes a thing in social media or other women at that age, teen girls start, deleting themselves, there's a good likelihood it becomes like a trend.
A standalone complex.
Exactly. That's
But I think there's something about Japan's culture generally. The reason why Japan's already a suicidal country. The reason and motives for suicides amongst people aged 19 or younger include school-related problems such as poor grades and inability to decide a future course. I think that's the biggest one because they don't see how they're going to fit into this society at all, right? I mean, what do you think about
social media is playing a part on this, dude? That's got to be.
But they were already killing themselves in Japan before they had social media, right?
But these kids are young enough that they weren't raised in the pro, because you got to understand Japan has made a huge effort to like combat this, and so like those kids have been raised in a Japan where they're told this is not, they're not glorifying it the way they used to. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've seen a lot of shit that Japan has like done the government is like trying to put a stop, because they need people to stop offing themselves, so they've made a huge effort to push like against that old school mentality. So those kids were raised in that new Japan that's not glorifying it. So I don't think
if you can't find meaning in your life, why can't you breed like everybody else and pay your taxes? I don't know.
Japan is just, the Japanese people in general are really good at whatever they put their minds to. Like they out American our own culture frequently. If you look at the Japanese rockabilly scene or like the Japanese like hip hop culture scene or the chopper motorcycle scene, it's like they turn it up to fucking past 11.
It's because they're spiritual people, honestly. Like if you look at the they could even call themselves like materialist or atheist, but it's like baked into their DNA. The concept.
They're all just autistic. I think they're autistic people.
No, I think it's the exact opposite. I think autistic people are like cut off from their intuition and souls, and maybe that's really what like social media is doing. Like the more we interact with each other through words on a screen, the less we have those moments like back when we were kids where we would just look at each other and make a funny face and know exactly what we were thinking. Maybe that kind of sense is dying. Our actual like sixth sense, our intuition.
Well, it seems like it looks like the rate in suicides generally, like Mark Pink Troop said, is actually generally in Japan has gone down. A lot of people who've made it to 70 years old don't seem to be killing themselves in Japan.
Can we look up the numbers in America? What is it going up in America for the same? Because I think teenagers are at high risk of this shit. Because I was a teenager before, and I know how fucking you think everything is 100 times worse than it is, and you don't you don't have the vision of your life beyond school, and then you have social media, which heightens that to like an extreme degree. I think this is not just a problem with Japan teens. I think this is going to be a problem with teens across the board. if they're allowed on social media, and we keep this social
Isn't
media.
it cool that
TikTok
people
lifestyle.
don't like to kill each other in February for some reason? They just like to stay alive for February. It looks like, which is kind of nice.
They fuck a lot in February.
It's a good time to be alive. I don't know. I'm gonna look for like a further skew to see how long it's been or what the number is. Over 49,000 people died by self-deletion in 2022. One death every 11 minutes. 13.2 million seriously thought about it.
That's it.
I don't know. You can see here we go. Here's the rates. Okay, so suicide rates have increased 37% in the United States between 2000 and 2018. Consider that in Japan, where it's actually decreased on the whole. It was in 2003 or something like 37,000 people died in Japan of self-deletion, and now it's down to like 20,000. So that's like 13,000 people less. However, more kids are doing it than ever before.
So doesn't that give you a little more context that maybe this isn't a Japan problem?
Yeah, I agree.
Is kids being on social media a problem?
Well, there's
Which I think is
maybe.
I mean, I don't think, however so many veterans are self-deleting because, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, because of social media. I think don't veterans make up a pretty large percentage of those numbers, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, for sure.
Honestly,
I think that's a different situation. I'm just talking about kids, like teens.
Well, they have their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed yet.
Be right back.
When it comes to the Japanese, usually like their biggest gripes when I like listen to like the younger people talk like on Twitter or something, like I think they're just pissed about Africans, like the Nigerians or something. There's like a lot of racism going on, and I think it's because they're getting an influx of refugees or something, and maybe that's giving them something to live for. It's something to fight against. They're like, oh yeah, now I have something to hate. So why would I kill myself now?
Yeah, I mean, if you live to that certain point, but it does seem crazy to me that they can't find a reason to live. I think Pink Trip has a good point that imposter syndrome from social media might be a huge part of this, that kids are seeing only the advertisements of happy faces. If you take a picture of yourself online, it's usually you in a good mood on a good day. You're not seeing people, with constipation or with a headache or with a broken heart. These are not the things that you see. Even if someone does post about that, well, that just bring that down in the algorithm. You don't want to see, your friends going crazy on Facebook and losing it. You just kind of like unfollow them. People want to see the happy pictures. That's one of the things. It's like a positive reinforcement. But then you're just thinking that everyone's always on vacation all the time, always having a good time. And why aren't you? What's wrong with me that I'm not 100% happy all the time, like all the pictures on social media?
Actually, you know what? This is basically segueing into a discussion about the use cases of social media. Like what do you ultimately use it for? I mean, I've used it for all sorts of dastardly things, self-destructive things, but I've been trying to use it for more productive things lately, like instead of just, I don't know, shit posting all day, trying to piss people off, like why not, like, I guess, express like your deepest feelings about things and see how it reacts, see how people react to it. Maybe it'll change them. Maybe it'll change their outlook. But, other people could use it strictly for marketing purposes, like promoting a product or a service. Like that's fine too. I mean, it's really all about like energy, right? It's about, because attention is a form of energy, and all the social media stuff, it's basically the art or the craft of diverting a person's like chi, their attention, to your thing, whether it's your words, your thoughts, your product, your service. That's the real game. The game isn't really about making yourself look good, making yourself look cool, or talk about how depressed you are. The real game, baked in, underlying all those desires, is just a game of getting your attention. And the real thing is, like, it's so murky because people take attention for granted. They take their own attention for granted. They don't treat their attention as like a powerful beam of energy that changes things, like on a subatomic level. Like they just view their attention as something they could just squander away. And if you square that away with people, like show people how powerful their attention really is, well, I mean, I think that's going to change things. And, you could do that by example.
Well, it's crazy how they can give you something like, again, with the drug addict corporation giving you, like, Uber was like, when I first had Uber, I think I had like 2 years worth of free Uber as the business first started in California, because they had all these chipsets or these cards and these codes and everything, and you could make a new email with a new phone number with Google Voice so quickly. I was just getting free Ubers for a long time, and I knew it. I knew at the time. I was like, this company, man, they're going to put everybody out of business, and they're going to be the last one standing, and then I'm going to be paying $20 or something instead of $2 for a taxi. That's where we're headed. And not only that, the people driving the taxi are going to be replaced with the drones themselves, because they'll have all the money that they made off that they can control us. Same thing with Facebook. It's like Facebook. I remember getting 20,000, 50,000 posts on my earliest pages. I've been radicalized by the internet, one of my earlier pages. And then they just shut it down. All of a sudden I have the same social control mechanisms as everyone else, where you can only get in touch with 200 people, 150 people, a number very close to the number they think is the amount of people you can efficiently interact with, right? You can only have, was it 150 friends village? There's like a whole, the 100 Friends project, this idea that basically you can't really interact with that many people. And so the best thing is to have only 100 friends. And that, then they're like, okay, well, now you've got a village and we have all of these people around the world. We bring down the people that are hyper social. Like I was having 5 schools, 30 states, going around the world. You know what I mean? I have friends in all over a weird amount of people that I've met that I keep in touch with.
Have you heard of the Dunbar's number?
I think, is that what we're talking about? Remind me. Is that the thing?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, the suggested, that's what we're saying. The suggested limit, the amount of social interactions that you can maintain. That's it. The Dunbar's number.
Well, this is actually really funny because I was talking to Andrew earlier. I was like, because we were talking about collectivism and, you know, like on a level where it's like, well, do you want a better world for everyone? And he was like, well, I don't want a better world for selfish assholes and greedy bastards or something like that. I was like, so it's not everyone. So realistically, you only want a better world for 150 people because of the Dunbar's number. You can't really consider all of the people in the world who aren't selfish or greedy. That's too much processing power. It's either everyone or just 150 people. So that's really what you want, like, socialism for, is 150 people at the end of the day. On a personal level.
But I remember in 2019 in Gibraltar, driving around in Spain, listening to the British radio as they talked about Dunbar's number and all of the misconceptions that they had learned they were wrong about in terms of social working. And so the idea that they realized, you know, hey, putting a bunch of people in an open office space was a bad idea. They thought it would be a good idea because they thought the internet was an example of people, you know, a bunch of people together, a bunch of good things happen. What they realized is the difference was enough that when you're in a big open space, you're back to worrying about predators. And so the ideal solution would be to have everyone online, because then they'd be able to have their back up against the wall and they can see the whole room and they can be safe from predators psychologically. And you can be more comfortable, and everyone's an individual. So we need to get rid of the open office aesthetic, which was Google had like these huge open businesses where everyone was kind of like, hey, let's all huddle together and see if ideas mix and match. They realized, no, what you want are people working from home. Interestingly enough, that this all happened 6 months before COVID quarantine. But they also were saying on the BBC that the Dunbar's number produced examples that people who thought they wanted 5,000 friends, they can't interact with those 5,000 friends very efficiently. So they're better off just having 150 or so people that they know. And
that's also,
immediately, as soon as this kind of information came out there, they destroyed the algorithm on purpose, right?
Yo, you see this in military organizations too. Like they consider the Dunbar's number when they organize like units, platoons, battalions, companies. Because it all plays.
But like again, it's not right for every person. Like I have 100 friends in 100 different cities, and I like that because I can maybe spend today interacting with 100 friends and tomorrow go in a different chat group. And I grew up very meta in that respect, that I was able to connect with all sorts of different people. And to watch that taken away from me so that I'm reduced to 150 people, I think I do it okay, because even though we have lower views because of that, my friends all have 150 different friends each. And there can be exponential growth. It's incredible how still I can go to any city. Just tonight, I had some random Instagram message from somebody who's watched a ton of my videos a dude from El Salvador who lived in Qatar, lives in Vienna, is connected with all of these different people here. And I'm finding out tons of people have been watching my show that I never knew watched my show. And the same thing when I went to Bermuda. I get off the plane in Bermuda. I got my camera out. I'm like, look, we're in Bermuda. And all of a sudden, someone I hadn't met yet who's been watching my show sees me there and comes and picks me up from the airport because he lives in Bermuda. And the power that you can have people working together, communicating with, that's a thing that the Dunbar number is designed to stop you from having, because they don't really care about what benefits you. They see it as a system. If you have enough people that are in these 150 person groups, they control all of the groups and they become a series of lodges, Facebook Masonic lodges that keep you trapped, but they can transcend. That way, only the elite are able to transcend these psychological borders which we were put up. And I feel like this is an extremely dangerous precedent.
Question.
Yes, you, the handsome one. Hold on, the handsome one first. No offense.
That's got to be terror. That can't be me. You do. I just want to bring it back to you're talking about Uber, right? And how we can basically get rid of these platforms being the ones deciding the prices and basically draining the cost and making everything more. Why don't we just turn Uber into a utility, right? Why don't we, like, you guys are communists, you'll like this. Stop putting me on full screen, dude, please. Jesus Christ. I don't want to look at myself as I talk like that. It fucking throws me off. Now, what if we made them utilities? What if we made Facebook a utility? What if we made fucking YouTube a utility? We made all these platforms just basically, okay, everybody has a right to these platforms. Maybe there's a small little fee that the government takes just to handle the cost of running these platforms. And everybody has it. And instead of Uber being the one that's like, we're going to take 22%, blah, blah, blah. No, it's just between the customer and the guy delivering the service. And he can set whatever fucking price he wants. And we get rid of, the platforms being run by private companies that are just fucking making the system shitty and not being what it could be.
Which utilities work well when owned by the corrupt state? Which utilities can you trust to the state to own?
That's the issue.
Give me an example of, like, does the federal post office do a job very well? I would do almost anything to avoid.
I think the federal post office is pretty decent. I would
do almost any. There's a reason why dogs attack them.
What are the platforms need? The platform's already there. They have everything they need. Okay, we don't need people to come and redesign the platforms. The platform's job is just to find, for people that have a service, to find people who are looking for that service. So then we get rid of the top man that goes, okay, and I'm also going to take 20% of that money, and then I'm going to decide the price that you have to work for. No, we just make it between the guy that has the service and the person that wants the service. And we have these platforms that basically they're already there. How can government fuck it up other than to charge people too much for it?
Exactly, which is the issue.
I think that exactly. So I think the third option. So one option is it's owned by the corporations, right? The Ubermensch, right? The super persons, the corporations. The other is it's owned by the state, the monopoly of violence, right? They can force you to do anything. There has to be a third option. The third option is it's not owned.
They can't just, so if they do stomp on our First Amendment, then we can sue and
yeah, but how long is that going to take you? 5-10 years to go through court? By then they've already exploited 100 million people, billion people.
Well, yeah,
the third option is better.
It's going to be a corrupt government. Go ahead. What's the third option?
Right. So, because the first option is the Ubermensch. The second option's owned by the monopoly of violence. The third option is in the commons. So something that cannot be owned, right? So if you build, like, for instance, we talked about the antitrust with Unix and Bell Labs. This led to Linux. Linux can't be owned. So if you make this infrastructure something that's in the commons that anyone can sell because no one can own it, anyone can do that service, then you make it so that there's no incentive for the corporation to try to monopolize it because they can't monopolize it. And there's no way to be for it to be controlled by the monopoly of violence because the state has no control over it either. So this is why I think this idea of power to the people, it might sound Marxist, but it's this idea that information is free, anyone can use it. Disruptive technology should be in the commons and not.
How does that work in practice? Like, okay,
I got a good example. So a parallel to this would be like,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so a parallel will be like, think of like how smartphones, like how they're basically monopolized by like a handful of companies. So if we want a good top of the line smartphone where our choices are highly limited amongst these dudes. Now, what if someone invented a modular smartphone, as in like a platform where you're not just beholden to what's on the phone. You could take pieces off and replace it with better ones, like a new camera or a better microphone or a better or more ports or less ports or a better screen, you know, with better resolution. And just from this having
That
this
sounds
one
so much
platform.
like China. You're killing me, bro.
But I'm just saying, like, that's basically
That's what black market China factories. That's why I remember when the iPhone came out, it was like 2 weeks later or a week later that a clone of the iPhone was available in China from the same town that the iPhone was being made by Foxconn. And the only difference was that the back was removable. It had a regular battery and it used a USB port because they could use the same molds because at night when people aren't working at the factory, they just keep running the factory. But B, they could also use parts that were ubiquitous. And so the USB, the Universal Standard Serial Bus, that would be an easier thing to use than some proprietary port. Using proprietary Sony memory, proprietary this and that. These are the things that lock it into their hands. But we really do live in a modular world where anyone can make a cell phone. These companies make cell phones from all of the different ubiquitous batteries and ports and screens that are available. They buy a bunch of screens from this part of China. They buy a bunch of batteries from that part of China. And they use an Android-based operating system. What is this? Back to that Linux situation. It's an open source operating system that you can build your own version of. You don't have to use Google's version of it, right? Google tries to lock you into using their services. You have to have the Google Play Services app in order to use Google Android apps on the phone, but you could always break those too. So we really should be moving and incentivizing it that anyone could make their own phone, right? Any corporation, at least, any collective, any working union, Gewerkschaft, you might call it a labor union, should be able to make whatever product they want to make. And any refrigerator repairman should be able to repair any refrigerator because there should be a certain amount of uniformity to what we expect in that world.
And that's how you do it. That's how you preserve your, like, that's how you do your anti-monopolizing is you have.
But that's what China does. That's why they have all these knockoff McDonald's everywhere, right? Because
I mean, there's drawbacks for sure. Like, you're going to get a bunch of shit. Like, it's going to work like evolution. You know, you're going to have like useless shit like squirrels with wings or spiders with exploding asses. But every once in a while, like million or so years, you get opposable thumbs and shit just works, you know? Like,
spiders with exploding asses could be useful. Sorry, Mark.
If the market works right, like people should, you know, bad ideas, bad companies shouldn't survive for more than like a second. You know, those bad ideas are not going to have like customers spending money on.
How does Microsoft still exist then? See, this is the thing I don't understand.
Well,
why is Adobe still a company?
It's the perspective. You know, now I don't know if it's going to take off, but they have these like neat little modular. They're not cell phones, but they're computers. Like you could swap screens, you could swap a keyboard on, and they're basically like little handheld like Raspberry Pis, and they run on Linux. And you could install all your tools, whatever you need, maybe even a music player. And
Google is pushing really hard for this idea, the open source hardware, right? The open source hardware movement. I think it's very important.
But then they're going up against like mega caps that just saw their opportunity and they were like, no, this is our game. Like telecommunications, we got that.
And until like the culture of corruption and corrupt thinking stuff, like there is trickle down effects with that because, you know, people feel exploited and then they want to exploit any sort of like backdoor or you know, everyone's trying to come up a certain way. There's how do you insulate something that's so open and free from bad actors, whether they be on the top or the bottom, and that's where, you know, you get into the issues of, you know, who's the regulating body and how do you prevent there from being too much centralized power there. Because it's there just has to be a huge cultural shift in
I think our founding fathers thought they had the solution to that, didn't they? Like
absolutely.
small governments that you know, like you shouldn't have somebody deciding anything for an area that they don't fucking live in every day, right? So like all the decisions should be made locally, and that's why the federal government, you know, a lot of the conservatives think the federal government needs to become very, very small, and we need to go back to local power being it, you know?
Yeah, but things like data and information and money, those are like global, like that's a global scale of interaction, you know?
Yeah.
That's a different level.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really at the end of the day, it's like it's skill building, you know, because really you have to like learn how to learn. I mean, I forgot who said it, but they were like, you can't enslave an educated people. Now, if the people can educate themselves with tools like the internet, that's like and I'm not talking about like learning how politics works. I think that could be like a massive waste of time if you don't have like an essential skill stack first. But you could learn like technical things. You could learn like the fundamentals of like critiquing design or learning how like engineering principles work. You know, like I think that's stuff that's accessible, and that if everyone like starts accessing that, then they look at things differently. You know, they start to like imagine, what can I do instead of just like with like a few computers, instead of just like surfing Google and YouTube. Like,
it's not enough to have guns in schools. We need to have guns in libraries too. And I like the 3D printer thing. This is actually a good example of the open source hardware movement. When were 3D printers invented? Maybe thousands of years ago, but for sure 25, 40 years ago in the 80s, people had 3D printers, but they had patents on them and they were very expensive. And they're from people at Carnegie Mellon working for Xerox and the government, Park Research. But the patents went out after 25 years. And now you've got a bunch of people making open source printers, which are super cheap. You can get a printer for like $100 or less and start printing. And the chips are free. I mean, Arduino, when I say free, like free as in speech, not as in beer. When was the first patent? You know, the Patent Act of 1790, April 10th. What do you think the first patent was? I'll give you a clue. Tartaria.
oh,
Anybody? Okay, the first patent was for the recovery of tartaric acid and other products from tamarind pulp. And this is patent 0001 originally. It's been repatented at some point. But this is the original idea of potash tartarian patents. And the idea was that you have a patent for 5 years. If you were still making so much money that you were going to pay the government, you could have a patent for 10 years, and then you could continue the patent for 20 years. I think this is why the Winchester rifle lasted for so long. The Winchester rifle was patented and lasted for 25 years. And after that, anybody could make a Winchester rifle. It became ubiquitous in gun technology.
the lever
Could you
action.
call it a Winchester rifle? You'd have to call it something else, though, right?
I think that trademark law is different and that you couldn't call it a Winchester rifle, but you could say it was a Winchester compatible or that it was like a Winchester rifle. You just had to say you weren't Winchester because he still owned at least his own name, right? You can be enslaved through education as well. Well, I mean,
like
we
in
started
debt.
with the China.
Like when you pay like $200,000 for a fucking graduate course in medicine, like could bury you pretty deep.
Go be a plumber. Go be a plumber. You talked about skills earlier, dude. That is like it. Like learn a skill like plumbing, and the economy could crash, money could become worthless, and you still have the greatest fucking value you could ever provide somebody, assuming that we still have plumbing. But yeah, have a skill like that. No matter what happens, you're going to be able to provide a service and you're going to get rewarded for it. If it's, everything crashes, then it'll be by bartering.
Yo,
you will
in that
always
vein,
fucking survive.
I knew this was one of the best things anyone ever told me. This girl I used to hang out with, she had a necklace that was like a pair of scissors. And apparently it's because her family was like full of barbers. And ever since she was a kid, her family taught her how to cut hair. Cause she was like, if you know how to cut hair, you'll never go hungry. And I was like, that makes me want to learn how to cut hair.
AI still can't do it. I cut my own hair. It's a very practical skill, I think.
Those are skills you need to learn. Those type of skills that no matter what happens, somebody's going to need that fucking skill and they're going to trade you something for it.
Yeah. And then there's also sorry, what were you saying? I was just going to mention cooking as another one. That's like its own whole can of worms. What were you saying?
Well, no, I was just wondering, do you guys want to talk more about confirming RFK Jr., or do you want to talk more about like mushrooms and Dune?
Did you see the clip of him going at it with Elizabeth Warren? That bitch pisses me off.
Dude, Pocahontas, though, you have to respect her because she's a Native American. Remember that. I don't know.
That's the clip. If you're going to play a clip, find that one. Because
okay.
She makes you never want to fucking get married. I feel bad for her husband, man.
Dude,
Man.
she does disgust me, and she reminds me of like one of my mom's friends who I hate a lot. So there's that. Let's start it.
There's a longer one than this.
Really?
Yeah.
All right,
man, this guy. Really?
I'll see if I can find the longer
They
clip.
go at it. It's a good clip.
How long of a clip? You're saying like 3 minutes? Will that be probably?
Let me see. I think I got a bookmark, man.
First of all,
if you find it, let me know. Otherwise, let me know if this is right.
I'm like so ignorant to American politics right now, but I saw a clip of like British Parliament. Those guys are weird. They be jeering.
Oh, dude, the British people. It's really lucky that I keep meeting British people I don't hate, and it's really good for me.
I'm asking about fees from suing drug companies. Will you agree not to do that?
You're asking me to not sue drug companies,
No,
and I'm
you
not
can
going to agree
sue
to that,
drug
Senator.
companies as much as you want.
I'm not going
What
to
a
agree
scummy
to
lady.
not sue drug companies or anybody.
So let's do a quick count here of how, as Secretary of HHS, if you get confirmed, you could influence every one of those lawsuits. Well, let me start the list. You could publish your anti-vaccine conspiracies, but this time on U.S. government letterhead, something a jury might be impressed by.
Oh my God, she reminds me of like every lady I hated in elementary and public school. She's just like prime evil poured into a condensed cup. It's like this is like the dimethyltrypta evil. It's like when you process morphine into heroin level of processing obnoxious into evil. Okay, I'm better.
By.
He needs more
appoint
Jonathan.
I don't
people to the
understand that.
CDC vaccine panel who share your anti-vax views and let them do your dirty work. You could tell the CDC vaccine panel to remove a particular vaccine from the vaccine schedule.
Please do.
You could remove vaccines from special compensation programs, which would open up manufacturers to mass torts. You could make more injuries eligible.
How much
for
did they pay you, Warren?
There is no causal evidence. You could change vaccine court processes to make it easier to bring junk lawsuits. You could turn over FDA data to your friends at the law firm, and they could use it however it benefited them. You could change vaccine labeling. You could change vaccine information rules. You could.
It's really hot that right behind him, you know, is your Curb Me Enthusiasm, Cheryl.
Change
It's pretty
which
cool.
claims are
You could
compensated
murder a
in the
woman in the street.
vaccine injury compensation program. There's a lot of ways that you can influence those future lawsuits and pending lawsuits while you are Secretary of HHS. And I'm asking you to commit right now that you will not take a financial stake in every one of those lawsuits so that what you do as secretary will also benefit you
disgusting, dude.
financially down
This
the
is
line.
fucking disgusting.
I'll comply with all the ethical
Hold on,
guidelines.
That's not the question. You
Sorry.
She's fucking taking money from Pfizer and all these other fucking companies. And she's going to spin it as if his scheme is to make money off suing the fucking vaccine companies. Yeah. It's fucking disgusting. I hate this woman. I
Do
don't
you
know
guys
what
think she's a reptilian?
She looks like a reptilian.
She's got them evil
Definitely doesn't
eyes.
look like she definitely doesn't look like a Native American. I don't know what you want me to say.
This is like a psychic
What?
battle magic going on.
You're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine pharmaceutical companies.
No, I am not.
God, this is why we're replacing the state.
My
Yeah, you
question
are.
is stop
That's exactly
enriching
what you're doing.
yourself. Look, no one should be fooled here.
To the gulag with you, lady.
As Secretary of HHS, Robert Kennedy will have the power to undercut vaccines and vaccine manufacturing across our country.
Holy God, please give him the power to save us.
And for all of his talk about follow the science and his promise that he won't interfere with those of us who want to vaccinate his kids, the bottom line is the same. Kennedy can kill off access to vaccines and make millions of dollars while he does it. Kids might die, but Robert Kennedy can keep cashing in.
What about
Senator,
the people who?
Wow,
like,
that sounds jealous.
Yeah, big pharma is
like
the ones that
vaccine
need
is-
all the money.
It's
Curb
just,
Your
vaccine is just a
Enthusiasm's
word like drug.
intro,
You know,
yeah.
it's
She's literally criticizing him for saying that people who get vaccine injuries should be able to get access to court, like to suing them. Like,
Honestly,
Totally.
she's saying that's a bad thing. Like, people shouldn't have the right to sue them. So
I feel like
confusing.
if Elizabeth Warren was like a first grade teacher, we would just like her a lot more. We'd be like, this lady's a good school teacher.
No. She reminds me of a teacher I had in elementary school, Miss Cassidy.
I
She
had
was
a
like
lesbian kindergarten
crazy
teacher,
old,
and she was
very
actually
short-haired, bitchy, like really mean, like but it wasn't her fault. She was like 900 years old. So she
Man,
was
I
just
had so
out
many
of place.
man-hating feminist teachers in the early 90s at my public elementary school in California that remind me of this lady. And just they had this
Yeah.
obnoxious quality of just like you need to understand you come from men, and men are the problem, and we're gonna educate your generation on what they did. It's like, dude, who hurt you, lady?
Yo, I had
That's
a
why you
science
cut
teacher
your hair
like that.
short.
I had a science teacher who was talking about like the difference in chromosomes and how the males actually have the deformed and fucked up chromosomes, and even went on to suggest or insinuate that Eve came first before Adam and all this like shit.
It's all just eugenics. It's
great
basic bitch supremacy nonsense. It's the same thing as when like black people are like, oh, our dark skin gives us magic powers. It's the same stupid bullshit, except
it kind of does.
We all had that teacher. I'm pretty sure.
Everything.
Basketball.
I don't know. I like all my
legally
teachers. Even the
now,
crazy ones, even because I never had like a teacher that did like the unspeakable. You know what I'm talking about? But like
I had a teacher.
I did the unspeakable usually. Oh, that's what you mean. Sorry. No, I just meant like if a teacher ever caused trouble with me, I made it pretty clear that it wasn't like a good idea. And then
you just had sex with them.
Not going to confirm or deny how many times whatever happened. I'm just saying it wasn't with Mrs. Garrison at very least. I don't know. He needs 51 votes. If 2 or 3 Republicans didn't, there's 53 Republicans. There's 51 votes he needs. So if 2 don't support him, then they could really pull him out. And I think that's kind of their goal right now. They want to do everything they can.
Of course, because they're all bought and paid for. Yeah, they're all bought and paid for by the pharmaceutical industry, by big pharma. Yeah, they're all shills, and then they come on and they always do the you're guilty of the thing everybody knows we're guilty of thing, right? And so how long are people going to fall for this shit? It's like you're sitting there, fucking your biggest donors are obviously the fucking people that you're worried about being sued right now, but you're going to make it about fucking RFK Jr. is going to become a billionaire from lawsuits against big pharma. Come on,
I got news for you. He's a Kennedy, and Cheryl's already got some money on her own.
Bro, did you see
right? You don't need more money.
Did you see the Caroline Kennedy video that she made on him?
I didn't actually watch it.
She's literally trying to insinuate that he's a serial killer because he was feeding his hawks.
Yummy.
Who is he? Christopher Walken?
Some people are dumb. Yeah, but this is just the slander game. This is just politics, right? They're just throwing shit for the sake of throwing shit. They don't have.
Yeah, but it's his cousin. It's his cousin, Caroline Kennedy, that's doing it. It's like
It's because she's a political ideologue. That's all.
It's all red.
These people are not. They're not playing the real. They're not playing clean, right? Like none of them are playing clean. It's all just dirty shit slinging, and none of it is actually meaningful. Like they say that he's controlled by the worm in his brain. Like what can anyone actually say in response to that notion? Just it's so absurd that like
they're controlled by the lizards. I don't know. Like
I hope
that's the thing. It's just they'll be like, oh, everyone else is this bad thing, and then they have no problem.
I hope the next president is like more absurd. Like I hope we get Marianne Williamson. We need to make America spiritual again.
Honestly, I think that what they should go for is the entertainment route. Like Donald Trump, the reason he won is because he's an entertainer and he's a good entertainer. He's able to do stand up. He's able to do fucking improv. If Jon Stewart had run against Trump, they might have won. They might have actually won because he could actually go toe to toe with him and talk to him in a real way. You gotta
give Trump credit because Trump caught on to kind of the zeitgeist to like what Americans were really upset about, and finally gave a voice to that where very few other politicians were.
For sure. But Jon Stewart was always good at that too. That's why he could have done it.
For Marxist. How good is having Dr. Phil on ice? I mean, like Dr. Phil used to talk to
honestly.
Now he's talking to normal pedophiles.
No, it's a missed opportunity to get Steven Seagal on there.
I think it'll happen still. There's no.
You're going to see the shared cinematic universe featuring Dr. Phil, Dog the Bounty Hunter, and that other guy.
Steven Seagal sitting down in a chair next to them.
Yep.
Did you guys see
content, boys?
Did you see the video here where he asked him like, "Have you ever been arrested for child sex?" And he's like, "A little bit."
He says he's never been convicted, but he's he's been arrested.
A little bit.
Yo, if you guys want to make some quick cash on the flip, start investing in jail stocks. This isn't financial advice. This is just a wild guess, but I'm guessing those companies are going to be profiting in the next earnings call.
That makes a lot of sense. I can see that happening. Private prison.
Yeah.
This is the thing. I mean, I know we're at the last part of the show.
Deportation transport trucks companies. That's what we need.
No.
Those
They're
planes have been getting
legit.
turned around.
There's so many prisons like littered across America that there's extra, so they're going to repurpose them to turn into ICE detention facilities, which is why a lot of these like politicians are dumping money into those prison stocks so that they're making quick money on the flip.
Well,
I mean,
you
it's just
know,
one and one, you know.
You know, like we're nearly done, but I want to, since you brought that up, just the fact that the Colombian president who tried to, the Colombian president who's having a controversial love affair with a transgender person, by the way, refused to allow Trump to drop people in the country. I would have done it anyway. I would have just like Pinochet dropped them from helicopters. But with the love in my heart for Mormonism, I would have given them at least parachutes, right? Just kind of let them glide into the country if they know how to do it. Now, he did have a call with the El Salvadorian president, Bukele, and Bukele said that they can use his new giant MS-13 70,000 person airport prison mall that he built. So if any of these countries won't take you back for being a criminal, Bukele is going to take you back. You can actually read the, I think it's here, the readout of Donald Trump's call with Nayib Bukele talking about this and what the plan was. Pretty fascinating that we're going to be using, this is our chance to export these people to like super prisons. But it makes you wonder about the future of the police state and all those Hong Kong dystopic prison martial arts movies that are. I mean, I wonder about where we're headed with this. And if we're putting so much faith in an authoritarian dictatorship that we're saying, oh, thank God he can get past the democratic rigmarole of bureaucracy and just do executive orders. Aren't we grateful that we have a monolithic government with executive orders? I'm just a little scared where we're headed.
But why is he doing executive orders?
Better than letting the
That's the only way. We have a fucking useless Congress and a useless Senate, and we can't get anything through there on either side for anything. So how else are we going to do anything? That's a Dr. Phil song I made.
Making the good tunes. This is the kind of I would drop out of the sky into Vietnam listening to this with a Armalite automatic rifle.
He's coming to the
Oh,
port.
Charlie, your favorite song.
Your ass, Dr. Phil. He's 74 years old, but can still kick your fucking ass.
Yes.
He might not actually be a doctor. And rumored to be Joe Rogan's father.
Makes sense.
We all know he's not perfect, but he's a million times better than Oprah. Dr. Phil. He's coming to deport your ass, Dr. Phil. The greatest reporter in this land, Dr. Phil. He's really old and probably smells really bad. Dr. Phil. He's 74 years old, but can still kick your ass. Dr. Phil.
I can get behind that.
Dude,
I mean, if you guys
so good at creating songs. It's insane.
I don't think people don't know. I mean, so Pink Trip, one of my favorite people. Mark, I'm glad you're here. Everyone, if you don't already follow Pink Trip, you ought to be doing it. He has a couple channels as well. You might have seen some of his work, even not if you don't know that you know him, you might know him because he does these incredible videos where he cuts together montages, and they're pretty beautiful. There's some pretty beautiful work he does here. If you want to take the time, please go subscribe to my dear friend Pink Trip and listen to some of his music. He's also working with some AI. He's doing all kinds of cool stuff. He's one of my funnier friends, but he's also a brilliant man. I'm glad you made it.
Live streams most days at 9 p.m. Central Time. So if you want to come by.
I might come by just to give you the same trouble that you give me, my friend. Pink Trip, you're great. And then Terror Risk Podcast. I want you all to take the time to subscribe. Let me just pop to their correct place right here. What's it doing here? This is not right.
It's all good,
sorry.
man.
I was trying really hard to be slick, and then it just kind of ruined it. Okay, here we go. Go to Terrorist Podcast. This is my friend Chris. He's beautiful. He's handsome. He's brilliant. He's from New York, and he also does a show with great music. He's a degenerate. Well, I wouldn't say that because I think I would say I'd say you like. I was gonna say you like bring honor to your family. Actually, to be honest, but make sure you check out his other content because he does a pretty cool thing in New York City where he has a live in-studio show. And it's pretty rad, actually. I would recommend you taking the time to check out his conversations. If you like these kinds of things, you'll love watching Chris's show. So definitely check out Terrorist. And then Andrew Vega, Bat Monkey Customs. Hey, that's you. So Bat Monkey Customs, Andrew Vega right here. We're going to be doing way more stuff looking at Red Note and the east to west synapse cross. We're going to be connecting synapses between the east and west brain, because I really want to see more information coming out. And, you know, it's not the kind of stuff you see on most of these right-wing podcasts. Let's put it that way. You're going to enjoy some of the social, ideological, revolutionary thoughts that come out of this man's mind. Bat Monkey Customs, Andrew Vega. I'm glad you're here. And then Vincent, let me go to your eudaimonia. Oh, how can I do this quicker? Send it. It's been a minute since I've been
SoundCloud. Eudaimonia, basically. Mania.
Yeah, Eudaimania. No, Eudaimania. Did I do it right? Did I spell it right? No, this is some guy in New Zealand.
I think I have an E, not an I, in my die. D-A-E.
Like there?
We got another Eudaimania, eh?
Oh, there it is. This is it. You could tell from the art style. All right. I'm not logged in, but you could tell if I was logged in, I'm following. And this is some of my favorite music. He does some cool real music and trippy stuff, and kind of reminds me of Infected Mushroom. It's pretty great. Chronovisor is one of my favorite tracks. You should definitely check it out. My friends, thank you for being here. You're all beautiful people. I really appreciate you. Thank God for you all.
Thank God for you.
Aw, you're sweet.
So long as I'm in this Oval Office.